Nick, welcome to the Candace Show.
Great to be with you.
You talk a lot of
I do.
You absolutely talk a lot of about me included. So I wanted to invite you onto the podcast because a lot of your videos have been going viral. Obviously, it will not surprise you to learn that according to the media, you might be the most evil person in the world.
They say that about me, yes. That's my reputation.
Definitely anti-Semitic, racist,
right.
Misogynist. There have been real fears of people speaking about your Groyper movement. So I did something before this interview is I went back into my phone and wrote Nick Fuentes. I wanted to try to remember the first time that I actually heard your name. And it was in 2019, a text message that somebody had shared with me that Ashley St. Clair had been kind of fired from Turning Point USA. And this person was speaking about Ashley St. Clair and had mentioned that she got in trouble a while back or whenever it happened because she took a photo with you and that you were this big anti-Semite. And then later that year, I had a conversation about the Groypers. It was something that I had never seen before, who were showing up on college campuses and asking questions about conservatism to various speakers, whether it was Rob Smith, Dave Rubin, and asking, hey, if we're conservatives, why are we promoting gay people?
Right.
You're the person that is the face of that movement. So
yes.
Can you just tell me, I guess, a little bit about Nick Fuentes before the Groyper movement?
Sure. Well, yeah, that was my big claim to fame. That was kind of when I came on the map in 2019. But before that, I was at RSBN, Right Side Broadcasting Network. I was a freshman in college. I was 18 years old. I was at Boston University, and I was a big pro-Trump guy, and I was very into politics, extremely political. But like a lot of people, I was pretty mainstream. I was very pro-Israel, libertarian, big PragerU viewer, Ben Shapiro fan, all that kind of stuff. But of course, in 2016, everything changed. You had the rise of the alternative right. And so it's guys like Jordan Peterson and Stefan Molyneux and Richard Spencer and Jared Taylor. And of course, Trump being the king of them all. So in 2016, everything changed. I became very racialist, very pro-white, very critical of Israel, very aware of the Jewish phenomenon that's happening in the country. And so I went to the college campus. I was freshman, 18, and I did a big debate with the student body president at the school. And it was kind of weird how it came together. I was pretty vocal on Twitter, didn't have a big following, maybe 200 followers, but I was wearing a MAGA hat everywhere I went, cafeteria to class, down the street. And I became known on the campus as that guy wearing the MAGA hat. And I would go on Twitter and I'd talk about my experience. People are picking on me. People are saying they were going to beat me up. People are threatening me, stuff like that. And I said, I was defiant. I was very pro-Trump in spite of all that. And so I got a lot of flack from the liberals on the campus, the Democrats, and one of these groups, Young Americans for Liberty, they came in and contacted me and said, would you want to set up a debate on the campus with one of your detractors, one of the people that's threatening you, trying to fight you? And I said, yeah, I'd love to do that. I had been a broadcaster in high school, so I said, yeah, let's set something up. And so they put out like an open casting call. They contacted a bunch of the people that had been talking trash about me, and they said they'd like to set up this debate. And they found the student body president. He was like a senior, and he was like some Democrat socialist or something, and I didn't even know the guy. But they set up this live event, and like 300 students came to it. It was like a big deal. And actually, someone Cassie Dillon, who's now known as Cassie Akiva, at that time, she was a fellow at Daily Wire. She was like, I guess she was working there temporarily. They had taken her to Israel. She had been there a few times, and she was studying at Mount Holyoke in Western Massachusetts. And she was involved with some of the campus groups, so she went to the event. And she live streamed it on Periscope at that time. And I didn't even know her. I had heard about her. I had seen her on Twitter. And when the debate finished, she came up to me and she said, oh my gosh, I just streamed that. You had 30,000 people watching. She goes, Ben Shapiro watched it. Milo Yiannopoulos watched it. She said, and you've got a bunch of different job offers. And we do a little post-game interview. She's asking me questions. And the last question she asked me, which is like the big setup for my whole life, she said, I just got back from Israel. She said, would you ever take a trip to Israel? Because I think you'd love it and so on. And, I sort of knew what was happening with Israel, but not 100%. And I said, yeah. And I said, it sounds interesting, but I think I have everything I need right here in America. And she goes, oh, okay. She wraps up the interview and she gives me her card. We exchange information. I get involved with her. She was involved with RSBN. And if you know, that's Right Side Broadcasting Network. They did all the Trump rallies during the election. And when the election ended, they said they were going to start up a bunch of original programming. They had Mike Cernovich, Bill Mitchell, a bunch of these guys that were on Twitter. And she had a show. It's called Raised Right. And so she contacted Joe Seals, who's at RSBN, and she said, I saw this guy give the speech. He's really great. He debated this guy on campus. We should give this guy a show. And so I got in touch with them. We got to talking. This was around the end of 2016, beginning of 2017. They said, what do you want to call your show? I said, well, let's call it the Nicholas J. Fuentes Show. They said, that's too long. Nobody knows who you are. We don't want that. I said, okay. They said, you need a different name. I said, all right. So I watched the Trump inauguration, which was January 17, and he said in the speech, a new vision will govern our land. It's going to be only America first. And I said, I like the sound of that. I said, we'll call it America First.
So question, how old are you exactly at this time?
I was 18.
18. Okay, so all of this sort of happened 17, 18 years old, or this all happened very quickly at the age of 18?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, and it all happened rapidly, and this was a time when I was still even figuring out what I'm about, because I'm a teenager. And I've been extremely political since I was like 12 years old. I read Thomas Sowell, Milton Friedman, all that stuff, all the libertarian, conservative stuff, even a lot of the neocon stuff, honestly. I was kind of all over the place. And I started to get red-pilled. I started to go on 4chan. I started to go on far-right Twitter. I started to get into some of these more interesting ideas. And I wasn't sold yet. That's sort of the thing, is I was sort of in this questioning phase, not sort of innuendo, but questioning, my political ideology. Like, I had these libertarian priors, and I had this kind of pro-Israel bent because that's just what there was on the internet at that time. All of the online content, it was PJ Media, which was Shapiro and Bill Whittle and Andrew Klavan. It was PragerU, Breitbart. That's what there was. But then in 2016, you had this alt-right movement, and suddenly you had all these other people that were in the conversation. Like I said, these guys like Jared Taylor and Sam Francis and a whole other crew. And so I really was open-minded and questioning what I really believe. And so that's really when I came into conflict with this establishment, something that I sort of began to figure it out and started to pay the price for this line of inquiry. And so that first conversation I had with Cassie Dillon, it prefigured kind of like my entire adult life until this point. And at that time, in the early months of the Trump admin, I was doing some digging on the Israel situation. And there were some notable news stories with Obama and then with Trump that made me ask some questions. In December of 2016, during the lame duck, Obama declined to veto in the Security Council a resolution condemning the settlements in the West Bank. And everybody called him a Jew hater for doing that. They said he was an anti-Semite. And I said, well, wait a second. And I was a big conservative. I didn't like Obama. But I said, wait a second. I said, it is the official policy of the United States since 1967 that we're against the civilian settlements. Every president, Republican and Democrat. I said, and all Obama did, he didn't even vote no. He didn't veto it. He didn't vote in favor. They voted present, and they allowed the resolution to pass. I said, that's consistent with our government's policy, the American policy. Obviously, Israel and America don't have the same policy on everything. I said, but now you have Fox News and Mark Levin and all the usual suspects are saying he's an anti-Semite and a Jew hater because he merely advanced our own position. I said, isn't that a bit of a double standard? Isn't that hypocritical? I said, and you know what it sounds like? It sounds like the left. You disagree with the left on race, and they say you're a racist. You disagree with the left on Islam, you're an Islamophobe, and all the rest of it. And so that was something that really set off an alarm bell. I said, something's not right here. And I wrote a big article about it on my blog. A couple months later, guess who comes to town for Trump's first visit from a foreign leader? It's Bibi Netanyahu. That was the first foreign leader that he hosted at the White House. And Netanyahu goes up there. They do a joint press conference. And Trump turns to him and says, I need you to take it easy on those civilian settlements in the West Bank because it's a big liability for us. Netanyahu goes home and authorizes the largest expansion of the settlements in Israel's history.
Wait, that's super interesting. Is that on camera?
Yes.
And secondly, on the settlement issue, are you both on the same page?
As far as settlements, I'd like to see you hold back on settlements for a little bit. We'll work something out, but I would like to see a deal be made. I think a deal will be made. Bibi and I have known each other a long time. A smart man, great negotiator, and I think we're going to make a deal. It might be a bigger and better deal than people in this room even understand. That's a possibility. So let's see what we do.
Let's try it.
Doesn't sound too optimistic, but that's he's a good negotiator.
That's the art of the deal.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and it's pretty obscure because, if you're not watching this stuff day by day, it kind of slips through the cracks. But that was the first foreign visit. I remember it very distinctly. And so I said to Cassie Dillon.
So you're just more dialed into it at this time because I was paying attention to politics, definitely, obviously, because I was kind of getting kicked over the BLM stuff. But I would have never tuned into that because we weren't really confronted with the alliance as much in 2016. But you're kind of dialed in and you notice this moment. And Bibi just kind of says F you to Trump and proliferates it further.
Right, exactly. And I was paying attention because I was really big into foreign affairs. I was a big Model UN kid in high school. That was like my thing. So I was really focused on all that. And I just pay attention. I ask questions. I noticed the patterns, so to speak. And so at that point, I became friends with all the Daily Wire people. There was Cassie Dillon, this writer named Elliot Hamilton, a writer named Aaron Bandler. Those guys were Jewish, and I think they had visited Israel a lot. They were involved in Jewish groups. I thought they were my friends, and they were talking about, they were setting me up with a writing gig at Daily Wire. They basically did like a preliminary interview. They wanted me to work over there. And I did a lot of collaborations with them. I gave them interviews for articles because I was like a campus teen that was pro-Trump and all that. It was big fodder at that time for the culture war stuff. And then I started asking them. I said, why does the United States give Israel $3.8 billion per year? Because at that point, the new MOU had just passed, the new Memorandum of Understanding. That's the foreign aid for Israel. And they actually increased it. And they expanded it for 10 years. So I said, why are they the number one recipient of foreign aid? I said, they're not a poor country. And I don't even really know what the strategic value is there. I said, so why, since 1978, uninterrupted, have they been number one? And number two and number three, it's the same story. It's Egypt and Jordan. They're the second and third biggest recipients. And we basically pay them because they normalized relations with Israel. It's like a bribe. I said, so, what do you make of this whole arrangement? I said, is it because they are our closest ally and I'm missing something? I said, or are we being lobbied? And there's this deep contradiction and double standard, and it's obviously being enforced by foreign influence and money. And I remember they hated the line of questioning.
And when you say they, you're referring to this friend group?
Yes.
Okay.
This Daily Wire friend group. They were all writers there, and you could still find their articles online. And they, at first it was sort of playful. They said, oh, haha, very good. They almost thought I was joking. They said, oh, it's very funny, but you really shouldn't ask that, they would say. They'd say, there's a good answer for all those questions. They'd say, but the way you're asking it is anti-Semitic, they said. And we're happy to talk with you one-on-one in person, like they're going to teach me how to ask the question. They said, because the way you're saying it, it sounds hateful and it's wrong. And I said, I'm asking a question. It's free marketplace of ideas, I thought. So I kept pushing and pushing, and I was tugging on a lot of these different threads. I was also asking about World War II and about some of the narratives there. And I was asking about 9/11 and the Iraq War.
And where are you asking this? Are you in a group chat? Are you just face-to-face, like with your friends eating a burger? Like when you say I keep asking these questions, what's the setup for that?
We're texting in group chats, and we're even doing it one-on-one. One of the venues, we had a big Christmas party out in Western Massachusetts. And Cassie Dillon invites me back to her apartment with a couple of friends, and everyone's drinking wine. I don't drink, so I wasn't drinking, but we're playing apples to apples, and it's a party atmosphere. We're friends, we're having fun, we're political, we're talking about it, and this is the venue. And it just got increasingly cold over time, and eventually it turned into stop. Like, you need to stop asking or else. And eventually, I kept pushing on a lot of these different things, and Cassie hits me up on Twitter, and she texts me this huge block text paragraph, and she says, we're not in the same movement anymore. She goes, I don't really recognize what you're about and your views. She says, I'm pro-Israel. She goes, and the things you're asking, the things you're saying about Ben Shapiro and other people, she goes, I'm just not a part of that movement. And she said, so we can't be friends anymore. So she stops talking to me, cuts me off completely. All the other people block me. Elliot, Aaron, there were some other people involved. They all block me on Twitter, complete ghosting. And I'm shocked. I'm floored. This is my first encounter with this kind of pushback, because you go into it as an 18-year-old in college and you get involved in these groups. I was involved in the Trump campaign, YAL, all these groups. And you think this is the free marketplace. We're here to debate ideas. It's a free speech atmosphere. And I'm also thinking we're all pro-Trump. And that's another big dimension of this is me. Trump was a huge influence on me. He made me a nationalist when I was a conservative. And America first was that operative phrase. I wasn't any longer a small government, constitutional individualist. I said, I'm America first. I'm about America. And so there's this deep contradiction on the Trump strain in particular and what they're pushing. And I said it really shouldn't be there. If we're America first on China, Mexico, Russia, everybody else, NATO, why aren't we America first on Israel? So this was deeply disconcerting and weird and disturbing to me. And I was honestly just taken aback. I was like, why are my friends now turning their back on me because of a disagreement? Well, fast forward. I'm doing my show on RSBN. This is in my second semester, so this is winter and spring 2017. And I'm doing the show. The show's going okay. I'm not getting great viewership. Nobody was. And I get a call from my boss, Joe Seals, who runs RSBN. And he goes, you got to keep this between us. He says, but did something happen between you and Cassie? Because she's still doing her show too. I said, yeah, we had this falling out, blah, blah, blah. He goes, she's been calling me every day for the past 2 weeks. He goes, and she's telling me, well, Nick said this on his show. Isn't that so racist? Nick said this on his show. Isn't that so hateful? That's not conservative. He says, and she's been trying to get you fired, calling me literally every day for 2 weeks. I said, wow. I said, I can't say I'm surprised. I said, she gave me this very cold, standoffish thing. She blocked me, all the rest. He goes, not only that, he's a pastor. He says, she's talking to me about converting to Judaism, which of course she now has. Fast forward all this time later, about a year ago, she marries some Israeli guy and she converts to Judaism. But he goes, I'm a Christian. He's an evangelical pastor. He says, and I'm trying to talk her in off the ledge. I don't know what's gotten into her, all this. And so this was how my college career began. That's sort of what created me. And then for the next 3, 4, 5 months, my life turned upside down where it was these people like Cassie, this guy Cabot Phillips. I think he was a Campus Reform. I think he might be a Daily Wire now. His father, Tim Phillips, ran this big nonprofit, Americans for Prosperity. He's friends with Morton Blackwell from Leadership Institute. This guy was coming at me. He was on me all the time on Twitter. And these people were just pushing this line. Nick Fuentes is alt-right. He's a white nationalist. He's a Jew hater. He's an anti-Semite. And, me at that time as an 18-year-old guy, I'm thinking I'm just asking questions, I'm just doing what we're supposed to do. It's free speech. I'm America first, the rest of it. And then the first big hit piece was actually written about me by Media Matters. Come to find out, Media Matters sourced the material from Cassie Dillon. She sent one of my clips. And I'll admit, it wasn't the finest clip. I stand by it, but it was, the way that I said it was sort of unfortunate. But she took a clip from my show. She sent it to Media Matters, and they did this big hit piece about me. And then I had the left breathing down my neck, Right Wing Watch, Media Matters, all the rest of them. And this was kind of like the launch of my career. They were trying to throttle me in the crib.
So how do you know that Cassie sent the clip to Media Matters?
This was told to me by Joe Seals.
Okay, got it. So she was sending around clips from your show.
Right. And that's their move. That's what they do. As you know, and the show wasn't even big. I had like 100 live viewers. I would get 1,000 views per episode. But they were on top of this. And even Ben Shapiro, he quote tweeted one of my tweets and said, because I said something to the effect of, if you're Mexico first, live in Mexico. If you're China first, live in China. If you're Israel first, live in Israel. And he quote tweets me on Christmas Eve and says, well, that's the surest sign you're an anti-Semite, is to accuse a Jew of dual loyalty. And I'm sitting there like, it's true. You do have dual loyalty. You're going to sit there and say you don't? So this was like it's maddening. It's literally will drive you crazy because by definition, it's gaslighting because you see it. If you're a logical person, it's obvious. And, this is something that maybe is helpful to explain my mindset. I'm waiting for someone to prove me wrong. I'm pushing on all these narratives, the foreign aid, the Iraq war, all of it. And I'm waiting for someone to tell me, here's all the evidence, the obvious evidence that it isn't all just a big thing. Mm-hmm. It's not just a big conspiracy. And I'm asking in good faith, where is that evidence? Cassie, my friend, and all the rest of them. And instead of getting an answer, I'm getting blocked. I'm getting tattled on. I'm getting clipped out of context. They're selling me out to the left. I'm getting called names. And, from the very start, this made me extremely cynical and resentful and furious about the whole thing. And I said, I'm like at war now with the whole conservative establishment and the same opportunities for advancement that other people are getting. They get their spot on Fox News or they get to run a Turning Point chapter, you name it. I'm now being closed off because there's this smear campaign now going on behind the scenes of powerful, connected people at Daily Wire, a whisper campaign telling everybody this guy's an anti-Semite. And this went on really for many years, goes on until this day. But that was sort of my origin story. That's how I got started.
Okay, so you were 18 years old when that happened. How old are you now?
I'm 26.
Okay, so that was a long time ago.
Yes.
And since then, would you say that going through that period of being rejected when you were literally just asking questions from people who were your friends and then kind of sold down the river, did that then make you go, okay, no, actually, I do hate Jews because of what you're doing to me. I'm now responding, and my response is I hate you all.
No, I never said I hated all Jews, and I've always had Jewish friends. Laura Loomer actually used to be a friend of mine. Back in 2018, we did a show together in June 2018. I had a Jewish assistant at one point in 2019 after the Groyper War. I'm a Catholic. I've always been a Catholic. I'm a cradle Catholic. So I've never hated anybody. I do have some provocative statements and some controversial views, but I never said they're attacking me. Now I hate them all. I never took it that far. But what it did do is it demonstrated that, where there's smoke, there's fire. Mm-hmm. Clearly, if you're pushing on something and you get that hard of a pushback, I'm thinking, I'm not a big deal. I'm an 18-year-old kid. I don't have a big show. What do people care what I have to say? If I'm pushing on this and I'm getting forceful response from these institutions, Campus Reform, Daily Wire, the rest of it, I'm thinking something must be up. So what I did is I just kept pursuing that line of inquiry and saying, well, if this is what they don't want us to talk about, this is what we should be talking about. Obviously, there's something they're hiding there. And this led what I would describe it as is like an 8-year inquiry. I've been digging into this subject for 8 years, and it's sort of a difficult subject because since it is so taboo and since it is so censored, there's like this layered deception. Where the first layer is they make it so that you don't even want to think about it. No one wants to be thinking about the Jews, or Israel. And certainly nobody wants to be on the wrong side of that. No one wants to be called an anti-Semite or a Nazi or a Hitler. That's sort of layer one. But layer two, because there's so much censorship, you don't even know where to get the information. If somebody wants to know more about this topic, try Googling it. All the search results are curated. If you go on Wikipedia, the sources are curated. So where do you go next? Well, you have to go to the kooks and the cranks and people that have been canceled. Some of them have been canceled because there are hateful people in this world that do hate Jews. There are people out there that are schizophrenic, but they're lumped in, censored, and called names and banished from society, just like the real scholars, just like people like Ron Unz, just like people like Michael Collins Piper, people that have investigated this and are intelligent, logical people. And so once you sort of descend into the second layer, the second ring of hell of being an anti-Semite, then you have to parse out the information and discern what's real, what's fake. Is it a religious thing? Is it a racial thing? Is it an Israel thing, a nation state thing? And then there's subtleties even beyond that, things I've been getting into on my show for the past few years. The deception is so much more convoluted and nuanced and subtle and ubiquitous than even people think. A lot of people think, and, not to kind of leap right into the topic, but people have a vague notion Israel has too much influence over our government. That's really just the tip of the iceberg. Because then you get into some of these people that have coalesced around Trump in the past couple of years after October 7th. And it's like there's an obvious reason why there's elements in the right. There's almost this form of camouflage they'll do. And one day they're limited government, another day they're white nationalists. You know, guys like Stephen Miller, who will present as very racialist and very nationalistic, very conservative, but yet still extremely loyal to Israel. And you start to say it's not just that Israel influences the government. It's not just there's some vague thing going on. There is this pervasive penetration of our society by a fifth column. And it's so sophisticated and multidimensional and spans many disciplines. It's such a huge topic that you almost have to be a little bit insane to tackle it and to get to the bottom of it, which is sort of me going through the looking glass over the past 8 years. So
All right, so I want to tell you where I agree with you and where I don't agree with you. But first, I just want to ask you, going back to your high school years, because obviously you were very dialed in. You cared about politics. I think you mentioned that you were involved with the UN. What did you say when you were in high school?
Model UN.
Model UN. What's that? What organization is that?
It's like a debate club,
Okay.
but you simulate the United Nations.
So
committees.
politics was a passion for you.
Yes.
Okay. You mentioned that you're Catholic,
Yes.
raised cradle Catholic, you said.
Yes.
Mom and dad in the home.
Yes.
Okay. So I think on your show, somebody told me that you mentioned your mom a lot. Were they together married?
Yes.
Okay. So your parents are still married.
Yes.
So you come from a pretty good home, it sounds like, obviously. You still have a good relationship with your parents.
Mm-hmm.
And you went to Boston University.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's going great for you. You kind of should be, like you said, maybe offered a contributorship on Fox News, and your whole life kind of gets derailed.
Right.
Where I'm going to push back on you is to say that you didn't have this anger where you applied it to everyone. Because and I don't have this clip, but I know that recently, and this was after I was fired from the Daily Wire, you kind of went on the attack about me speaking to Dave Smith, right? And saying, actually, I think we do have that clip. Skylar, I think we do have that clip of me speaking to Dave Smith. Do you want to run that clip?
She has nothing to do with me. She wants nothing to do with me. Doesn't do anything with me. No invitation. Won't bring me on the space. Won't bring me on the show. No acknowledgement. Nothing. But she is going to do a show with Dave Smith, Jew, Aiden Ross. You know, and I like Aiden Ross. I've said that before. I like Aiden Ross. But it's like you get canceled and attacked by Jews, and then you go and give it away to all the Jews, really? And finally, Aiden asks her, so what are your thoughts on Nick Fuentes? And she gives this load of PC response. She goes, well, you know, when he was a kid, he got attacked by them, and I understand why he would be angry and why he would be mad about that, but he needs to grow up and figure out what he wants to do. Oh, really? Oh, really? Bafangul, Candace. Oh, he needs to figure out what he wants to do. I think you need to figure that out. Talk about accusing other people of that which you are guilty. I think he needs to figure out what he wants to do. I think you need to figure out what you want to do, because you're full of and everyone knows it. You clearly have no idea what you're doing.
No idea what I am doing.
True.
What do you mean true?
You didn't invite me on the show.
But what does that, just let's first go back to the first layer of what you're talking about. She's speaking of Dave Smith. Yeah. What does that have to do with anything? You call out the fact that I spoke to Dave Smith, that I spoke to Aiden Ross. I didn't speak to them because they were Jewish. I also talked to Piers Morgan, all of these shows following me being fired. So you're just looking at the fact that these two, I didn't even know Aiden Ross was Jewish. I just had a PR agent say, do this. I swear I didn't know.
He's visibly Jewish.
Okay, but just so we're very clear,
No, I know.
I genuinely had no idea. Your PR person comes, here are the shows. Okay, yes. Dave Smith, we had amazing conversation when I was on the Daily Wire.
Mm-hmm.
And so your purview here is, okay, well, they're Jewish and she's doing their shows. while not saying to your audience she's doing a bunch of other shows too. How is that not you just kind of honing in before we get to the why you think I'm full of shit and don't know what I'm doing?
Well, here's the beef, okay? And it's pretty simple. Dave Smith, in my opinion, and I like Dave because I've done a show with Dave too, and I think he's a good guy. I respect him. I think he's super intelligent. And, he gave me a chance when a lot of people wouldn't. He had me on his show, and he defended me because he got attacked a lot from the libertarians.
And that's why you suck, because you get somebody who comes out and defends you and has you on the show when you're being canceled, and then you throw him under the bus because, like, I don't even know what your beef is. It's like, why not just have be totally like, oh, yeah, that was cool. We had a conversation. I disagree with him on some points.
Well, here's why. Because I don't think that I should be grateful for being given a chance.
It's not being grateful. It's just being a decent enough human being. Forget gratefulness.
Okay.
You don't owe anybody anything.
Okay.
But the point is you kind of lament the fact that you've been canceled. You lament the fact when nobody will have your platform. And in the very same breath, talk about being a hypocrite, you're going after Dave Smith for what? Like, why is she doing Dave Smith? Jew.
Well, I'll tell you. Can I explain why? I'm telling you why.
You can.
So my feeling on Dave Smith, and although I like him, is that, look, he is Jewish. He's also a libertarian, which means that, when he talks about, for example, the situation in Iran or Israel, he's an anti-war guy. He says, Trump is a war criminal who needs to be impeached. I don't believe in any of that. I don't care that Trump violated international law. I care that he's influenced by a foreign government. He said on another show, he said, Israel's a satellite of the U.S. We're the empire. And they're our satellite. They're like our aircraft carrier in the Middle East, which is something Joe Biden said, who's an AIPAC man. I think that Dave Smith is somebody who, because he's a paleo-libertarian, like Murray Rothbard, like Ron Paul, like a lot of these guys, he is someone who, because he's anti-war, is sort of forced to confront the Israel lobby. Because if you're anti-war ideologically, you have to talk about who's driving it, which is the Israel lobby. But he's not a religious Christian. He's a religious Jew or agnostic or atheist. He's not really a right-wing guy. He's a libertarian. He's
not a religious Jew.
He says that he's proud of being Jewish. He's proud of his ethnicity. He's proud of Judaism.
Should he not be proud that he's he's just born this way?
Well, but here's the point, though, is so he's not really 100% aligned with my view. Now, here's why that matters. I think that
it doesn't.
No, it does.
It doesn't.
It doesn't. I'll tell you why.
It doesn't. You can't say I want to create people in the image of myself.
No, I'm
completely ridiculous.
I'm criticizing people that I disagree with. And to put it very succinctly, I think that this conversation about Israel has blown up. It's gotten out of their control. Everyone's getting red-pilled. They want to control the conversation. And I think that Dave Smith is somebody that, because he's Jewish, because he's libertarian, they have selected him as a convenient spokesperson for it, because he doesn't really have a problem with Jews and their Jewishness. He doesn't really talk about the whole fifth column aspect of it. He talks about a very narrow aspect of it, which is there's this Israel lobby and they're sort of influential and they're driving us to war. That's one small selection of it.
So you think, just to clarify, you think he's like a psychological operation?
Yeah, effectively, yes. Okay. And I don't think he's doing that knowingly, but I think that they're creating the bounds of the debate by having him be the spokesperson, because
who is choosing him as a spokesperson? I mean,
Joe Rogan,
I could not disagree with that more. I just want to say that I patently disagree with you on this one. This is crazy. I think that he has moved the ball forward so much for, first and foremost, a lot of American Jews to have the courage to even question Israel, because in the same way that we were kind of brought up in the classroom with the, I guess you want to call it, emotional engineering around the Holocaust, learning about the Holocaust as like the biggest, most evil event that ever happened. Imagine if you're Jewish and you learn about that. It's the same way that Black Americans in the classrooms learn about slavery. So I understood the trigger emotional response that Black Americans had during BLM, because there was so much conditioning that happened in the classroom that makes them think that when someone says white supremacy is back, you have to riot. And I will extend that same understanding. I disagree with it, but I understand that when October 7th happens, it's almost like a childhood trauma for these people. Right. You learn this, your whole existence, it's existential crisis for you that something happened in Israel. And then you add in the fact that the ADL is sponsoring these trips to kind of make sure that they stay into this, this is who you are. And if somebody questions this, like, we could end up in the Holocaust again. you have to have some sort of an understanding, even if they're wrong,
Right.
you have to give them a little bit of time, a little bit of grace here. And so for him to be doing what he's doing and to be enduring a lot of the same stuff that I'm enduring, like he is on lists, he is being attacked by every single all people that are attacking me are certainly attacking Dave Smith.
Mm-hmm.
And your excuse is that he just is born Ashkenazi.
No, that's not my excuse. My problem
and he's married
is
to a
this.
Catholic, by the way. So that
good for him.
that's the part that I am even more confused about, because you said like he's a religious Jew. No, he's not. He's married to a Catholic.
What I mean by that is my criticism of Jews comes from a religious place. As a Catholic, we recognize that the Pharisees put Jesus on the cross, and the Talmudic Jews are the descendants of the Pharisees. And we also recognize...
And he is not a Talmudist. That's what I want to say.
But that's
he's
what I'm
not
saying.
any of those things. He's married to a Catholic. He's just born Ashkenazi. So when I hear you say, Dave Smith, Jew, I think it conflicts with your point about how even white people, like you're just kind of trained that you should just like, there's something wrong with you for being born white. No one should feel guilty about how they're born.
Look, it's
you know what I mean?
To sum it up succinctly, it's tokenism is what it is. It's a form of saying, we're criticizing the Jews in Israel. How do we soften and dampen the blow? Because we're going to get called anti-Semites if we bring on a guy criticizing Israel. I know we'll bring on a Jewish person, because then we get to say, I'm not an anti-Semite. Here's a Jewish person saying this. And here's the reason.
That's not why I had Dave Smith on. Actually, I had him on my podcast before I even left the Daily Wire. We had a 3-hour conversation talking about war. And truly, because I think it's important for you to hear this, I think sometimes you internet too hard. The way that Dave Smith came onto our podcast on Daily Wire, he wasn't even on my radar. Skylar, who you just met, the producer, was a massive Dave Smith fan for years. And just kind of like what the libertarian debate was that was being had. He's like, you got to check out this guy, Dave Smith. And I was like, cool, book him. Let's get him on the show. And it was my favorite podcast that I did at Daily Wire. Mm-hmm. So I just liked him.
Okay.
That's it. There was no incentive of like, well, let me get this guy on again. I was like, can we create the magic of what we spoke about war? Because I'm kind of falling, I guess, down the rabbit hole and learning a lot. And he had a lot of information I didn't know.
Yeah.
And that was it. So there was nothing behind it. So when I hear you say it, I'm like, okay, are you interneting too hard? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
A little bit. Do you think that you can kind of believe your own ideas? And look, we're all guilty of that.
No. And look, I mean, I'm going to stand by my point here, which is that me and Dave Smith are not ideologically on the same page, and will never be, because I am a Catholic and he is Jewish. Because he is Jewish, he still has affinity with Jewish people. And so my end game is to say, look, Thomas Aquinas said that Jewish people should be basically enserfed to the Catholic Church. I don't believe that. But the idea that we have Jewish people in America that are billionaires, that are running all the major media conglomerates, that are influencing the government, and they take advantage of the dual citizenship, it literally cannot be allowed. Like by definition, systematically or systemically, this creates problems. And so when I go on my show, I'm saying we can't have Jewish people in government. Like, we can't have them having billions of dollars. This is a problem. It's like a national security problem, because they are a fifth column. And as evidenced by recent developments, they're not loyal to America. Now, I
agree with you. And that's why I want to add this. I agree with you on the point that there is this operating fifth column of Zionism.
No.
Okay? No, but I want to be clear. And I'll tell you, this is where we disagree.
All right.
Because I think it's ridiculous to say to someone who's literally just born, he's like, I'm Ashkenazi, that is just his DNA, who is married to a Catholic, so you cannot call him a religious Jew. He is not a Zionist. He hasn't even been to Israel. So how do you just condemn him? And then also, how is that not toxic to what you're trying to do? So if you're saying that your entire platform is, I want to awaken people to this fifth column. Well, if I'm a Jewish person, okay, and I'm being raised, and maybe I'm worried about Israel because I kind of grew up and was told that I have to care about this because of the Holocaust, whatever it is. And I see this guy who's just going, Jew, guilty, you're Jew, doesn't matter, DNA, like you're 23andMe up there, Jew, guilty, okay? And you think that your ideas are going to grow with that perspective?
Well, they are. So that's happening. But
is that because of thanks to you or thanks to Dave?
I think it's thanks to me. But if you're asking me, I will answer. If you're lecturing me, I'll take a lecture.
I genuinely I'm asking you the question sincerely. You think it's growing because of you and not because of people like Dave who are going, okay, like, yeah, you can also think like this. It's okay to have this perspective. Like, you think it's because they're watching your show and they're going, he's got it right.
Let me give you a direct answer about the first part about Dave Smith. just because he's born Jewish. What did he say when he went on Joe Rogan and he debated, what's the guy's name? He debated the British guy,
Douglas Murray.
Douglas Murray.
Mm-hmm.
When he debated Douglas Murray said, and you hear this is the woke right phenomenon, which Dave has criticized, but Douglas said, there is this dark element that is growing on the right. They're Holocaust deniers. They hate Jews. If they slip on a banana peel, they blame a Jew and all the rest of it. Dave Smith said, I agree with you. Those people are a problem. I'm against Holocaust denial and all this sort of stuff. Joe Rogan went on the attack against Jake Shields, who's a friend of mine and a fighter and a boxer. And you see this over and over and over again with people like Dave Smith and even someone like Daryl Cooper, who's not Jewish. And, I talked to Daryl recently and we kind of made amends, but Daryl Cooper put out an article on a Substack saying the same thing. He said, I started talking about the Jews. I opened up this can of worms. Now that's all people want to hear about. He said, so I'm done talking about it because, there's people that can't handle it and they're taking it too far. And when I hear that from Daryl Cooper, when I hear that from Dave Smith, when they say Israel's our satellite, our aircraft carrier, I say something's not right here. There's clearly a subtle difference here. And that has a lot to do with, maybe Daryl Cooper not being a complete radical. And I think that has a lot to do with Dave Smith being Jewish because he says that his ancestors died in the Holocaust. Now, I don't think that he'll ever be able to say in the way that I can, that maybe the Holocaust wasn't legitimate or, maybe there's more to the story on World War II because it's his grandparents.
Okay, but
he says my ancestors went up the smokestacks at Auschwitz. And someone like me, I say, I don't care about Auschwitz. I don't care about the Holocaust. I'm done hearing about it. I have no affinity with that.
Right. But you also mentioned Daryl Cooper and you also mentioned Joe Rogan. These two people are not Jewish, right?
Right.
So are you saying that they're all condemned? Like, why does it matter? If Dave Smith, maybe he believes that. Maybe he's wrong. Maybe he believes it. Who knows? If Joe Rogan says that, maybe he's wrong. Maybe he believes it. Let's say we don't know. Daryl Cooper, what is the difference between these three individuals? Like, why is one represent a problem for you versus like your idea, going back to what you said, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's tackle the idea. Let's actually debate the idea. So do you not see how you run into conflict with yourself? You're like, well, here's my story. I just wanted to debate the idea. And then when it comes to Dave Smith, rather than saying, I disagree with what you just said about whatever topic, saying that there is this strand, let's actually have the debate because the better idea will win. That's how my brain works.
Yeah, well, here's why. Because this is another form of gatekeeping. When Joe Rogan says, okay, you're cool. Dave Smith is cool. But Jake Shields, he's a Holocaust denier. That's not cool. That's dark and evil and real anti-Semitism. You hear that all the time. They say, are you like a Dave Smith guy or are you a real anti-Semite? Because you know what they say? If you're a real anti-Semite, you're out of the club. You don't get invited on the show. Piers Morgan won't have me on the show. He banned me. Tim Pool banned me. Joe Rogan banned me. And it's like, wait a second. So, clearly some people are able to go on these shows and express some form of the view, which is, again, like what you're saying, there's this Israel lobby. But if you go out and say, you know what, 6 million, I'm not buying it. I think this is a political narrative. I think it's atrocity propaganda serving a fifth column. Suddenly they say, well, that's real anti-Semitism. We want nothing to do with that. You remain outside. And so, and look, it's not to me about, people then say, oh, well, you're envious. Look, I love doing my show. I love doing what I do. I want the real truth to prevail. And there's this concept of a limited hangout. This is a CIA tool, and I'm sure you've heard of it, but for your audience that maybe hasn't, when they believe that disclosure is inevitable, a secret, a taboo, hidden narrative that they don't want to get out, when it's inevitable that it is going to go out, what they will do is they will leak out some of the truth. The public is so enamored with the new information, they go no further. And they actually don't get to the critical details. And I think that, we're basically at that point with the Israel lobby and the Jewish topic. Clearly something is going on.
So you're just distrusting. And that's fine to say that you're distrusting.
No, well, I'm distrusting naturally.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's fine to, and you are correct, by the way, that there are these operations where they do these limited hangouts. And I'm very aware of that. That is true. And sometimes I have that in my mind when I'm watching something. I'm like, this feels like a limited hangout. Like they're not really kind of getting to the nucleus of the conversation. But I just really disagree with you that like just Dave is just guilty and condemned simply because he's born Ashkenazi.
I didn't say because he's Jewish.
well, on the clip, I think you just went like Dave Jew, and it's like, what does it matter? Joe
sick of the
Rogan, not
tokenism.
Jew.
I'm sick of the
But,
tokenism.
okay, and I'll tell you another reason why I disagree with that, and we can move on from Dave Smith because I like him, and I'm whoever I like. I don't really care to adapt my opinions on the basis of yours. But I also just in general feel like I was that person for BLM. And I'm genuine. I was totally genuine. And that was kind of my wake up call. BLM, I didn't really accept the victim narrative. Maybe a little bit like you, naive, walked into it like, oh, I'm just not going to support this thing. And I don't really want to be a Democrat. And then I dealt with the full weight of an attempted cancellation by the left at first. And kind of like she's, the token for the right. And people saying, well, they're only platforming her because she's a black person that agrees. And to some degree, maybe that's true. Like, obviously, like there is an element of tokenism. But I'm saying what I believe.
Sure.
I was saying what I believe.
And I don't doubt his sincerity. I don't doubt his sincerity at all.
So why problematize it? That's what I'm trying to get to. So it's then he's out there having to fight amongst these pro-Israel people. He's fighting the same Zionists that we are on the topic of Israel. And on top of that, he's got to deal with Nick Fuentes talking trash about him because he's like, well, this is just, who cares? If he can't help who he is. I couldn't help it. I was black and disagreed with BLM. I'm just black and disagree with BLM,
Well, here's the reason why. It's a little bit irritating because Dave Smith, for all the flack that he's getting, he remains on YouTube. He's been on YouTube the whole time. He remains on Twitter. He's been on Twitter the whole time. He has bank accounts. He has payment processors. And now that people are waking up about Israel, they want to invite a Jewish person on to tell us we're not real anti-Semites, we're not Holocaust deniers, but maybe something's wrong with Israel. And here I am, having been banned on YouTube, been banned by banks, every streaming platform, all of it condemned, life destroyed, and people still are gatekeeping me and saying, you're a real anti-Semite. And I'm saying, well, obviously we didn't come far enough. So I don't doubt his sincerity. And he's a big boy. He doesn't mind that I'm trash talking him. And I still consider him a friend, even though I've been critical of him. But we have to go a little bit further than to say something's up with the Zionists or Israel. It's not Israel. It is the Jews. And I think that Dave Smith, being a Jewish libertarian, I don't think he's ready to go that far. I don't think he is.
I want to know what you mean by that. So just so we're clear, is your perspective that if people don't platform you, it's because they don't want to go too far?
It may be that they aren't that far ideologically, but then that's my job to push them farther. And that's why I say it. That's why I say,
but maybe they just disagree with you. But that's another thing. Maybe they just
have me on
disagree
the show,
with you.
But I'm gatekept.
Okay, but if the more important, so for me, if I care deeply about what's happening to the Palestinians, obviously, I've made a point to talk about that. And I very much see what you're speaking about, that there is this coordinated, very sinister movement. I think it operates on the left and the right, whether it's the ADL or AIPAC. The money is flowing to instantly cancel people, to get them fired, and it's vicious. I mean, it is dirty business. And to survive it's hard for most people to even survive it when they go through it because they're so smeared. It's like an effective tar and feathering. And for it to happen when you were 18 is ridiculous. But at the same time, if I'm going to use my platform to speak about that, I want to make sure that I'm hosting people that can explain that to people that otherwise may not even be aware of that.
Right.
So if you're going to host, why are you sitting this person down on your show? Well, because we're having a conversation about something that's important. I can either learn from that person, right? Or I think that this person can teach something to my audience, right? If I were to host you and that was the clip that's coming out, do you think people are going to go, yeah, that just made me realize here I am just believing that we should, I'm a normal conservative like you. You said you were 18. I like these people. And the first thing I hear Nick Fuentes say is, Dave, they're not going to think that you're a good person.
This is concern trolling. I'm sorry.
No,
but this is tone policing and this is concern trolling.
It's not.
It is
it's
absolutely.
Not tone policing. Hold up. Let's back it up because I'm going to let you speak. It is not tone policing. What I am saying is that you just went through the fact that you genuinely were coming up, that you were a conservative, you genuinely liked Ben Shapiro, you genuinely thought these things. So that wasn't you would not look back on yourself and say, well, that I was problematic. You just would be like, that makes sense.
Right.
And I'm saying to you that the majority of people have that perspective. You don't have to assign an evil motive. You get into something because you believe it. That's it. It's just that simple.
Okay.
And if you're then going to have somebody who's condemning them, what are we learning? If you're just going to say, you're this, you're that, it's like you've forgotten yourself. Like some people just aren't there wherever you are.
Okay, but I missed the part where I condemned him. And I talked about the Dave Smith part repeatedly. And by the way, you're mixing it up and saying, well, if people watch the show, what are they going to think if they see that clip?
I'm just trying to say to you, why would someone maybe say,
Can I
okay,
talk?
if
Can I answer?
Yeah, go ahead.
Come on.
Go ahead.
I mean, so, look. I'm a funny guy. I'm bombastic. I'm provocative. That's part of it. And you know what? You can concern, troll, and tone police about, whether
I'm not tone police. I wouldn't have
kind
you
of
on
are.
if I'm tone policing
you
and
call
playing
Dave
your clips.
Smith Jew this. We're laughing during the clip.
Yeah,
You and I are
it's
laughing.
funny.
It's funny. And
I'm
that's
laughing
why,
at you making fun of me. I don't mind you making fun of me.
Yeah, and I don't
I'm
mind
chill.
you making fun of me if you've ever done that. I mean, and I'm chill too.
No, I don't care. I'm not, like I said, I told you. It's funny.
I like that about you because I think that you're hardcore. I think we're kind of similar in that way. We don't have thin skin. So I appreciate that about you. And I know that Dave Smith is the same way. And I said on that show and other shows, I like him. I think he's a good guy. And I agree with you. I think he's sincere and I respect him. And I think he's a good person, actually.
He is.
But I do think that we disagree. And to the extent that I'm critical of the situation, it's not a personal directed at him. I know maybe it comes across that way or it sounds like that to you, but I've said it repeatedly on my show and that's not the only time I talked about it. I said the problem is this idea, and again, intentional or not, that we need permission from a Jewish person sitting there so that we're not real anti-Semites to talk about the issues. And I also disagree with Dave Smith on the extent of it. Now, maybe he fundamentally disagrees. I'd love to talk to him about it. That'd be fine with me. But it does come from a place of disagreement. I'm not condemning him.
I think he genuinely just disagrees with you. And that's kind of the point I'm trying to say when I say don't internet too hard, is that sometimes you can assign a conspiracy where it's just not, that's not the motive. Like for me, I just wanted to have Dave on my show because I had him on before and I think he's great and I like his stuff. He's one of my favorite follows. That's it. I don't even think about the fact, well, he's a Jew, so let me have him on to tokenize the situation. I don't care. I just like him, Yeah. And in terms of why I could try to appreciate where if somebody's trying to wake somebody up to something, you could dump, I guess, a bucket of ice on someone when they're sleeping and wake them up. Or you could kind of say, okay, are you starting to, with my sisters, we have this debate right now about me being a Catholic. My sisters are not Catholic. I don't need to be like, you must understand why the Catholic faith is right. And it's like, I got there. They're not there yet. Like, chill. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Here's where I was. My sisters were Democrat when I got into politics. And we've always kept a sense of humor about things. So it never became this toxic name calling stuff. Well, it was, but it was like with a sense of humor about it. Like my sisters would be like, have fun at your Klansman rally. And I'd be like, cool, because I'd ask her to watch my cat. But the idea that I think that at the moment that I recognize something or at the moment that I become something, everyone else must therefore become that thing. I think that's asinine. I do.
Yeah, but I'm not saying that. Look, my show is my platform and I say what I feel about the situation and my audience is already there with me. I'm doing a show. And by the way, I don't even do it for the audience. I say what I say. I said it 8 years ago when it really wasn't popular. I said it 5 years ago when it was a little more popular. I'm saying it now. And and that's the difference, I guess, is this is a common critique of me and my audience. People say, well, are you being tactful? Are you being strategic? These kinds of things. I'm not setting plays. I will acknowledge I'm impulsive. I am bombastic. I'm out there. I'm a maniac, but my job is to put the truth out there. I am the bucket of ice cold water and I'm dumping it on people and some people are going to get it and some people it's going to take them longer. I'll let other people set the plays. I'll let other people kind of do the breadcrumbs and do this incremental approach. Me, I kind of figured it out. I was off to the races from the beginning and I just want to cut to the chase and get to the most fundamental part of the idea. And so, that's why some people don't like me, granted. But I think the big picture is that I have been suppressed for 10 years because we could sit here all day long and say, were you mean to this one? Were you mean to that one? Was this out of pocket? The fact of the matter is I have been more censored than anybody for 10 years.
Yeah.
And that's the real reason. So, and but
you're not still being censored. I'm just trying to provide feedback.
I am though.
Provide feedback to what you just said in that clip. Like, why wouldn't they have me on their platform? I'm not tone policing. Go on your show, say whatever you want. Actually, I would make the argument that you're kind of tone policing our shows by saying, why won't they? Look, whatever. I'm just saying don't assign evil motive where there just might not be one. Like,
I don't think I am.
Okay,
I was
fine.
mad that you wouldn't. Well, you don't believe me, but I was mad that you're saying, okay. You're mad that, I was mad that you wouldn't have me on the show because, look, I stand you so hard on Twitter. I was Candace Owens and the Groypers were there for you for Daily Wire and they wanted the collab so bad last year. And you kept saying, well, we'll do it. But then you said,
what are you talking about? Let's back this up.
Okay.
Because I do want to get to this. This is actually something that I find to be very funny. First and foremost, because I don't know what a groyper is. Okay. This is, and I will give you credit where credit is due. You have managed to infect the brains of 40-plus-year-old men. And that is actually, I think, the most compelling part about you, is I watched as I was coming up in my career, and I will say I've had 4 kids in the last few years. I don't pay attention to, I think you were on Cozy TV.
Yes.
You were banned everywhere. I only know that because 40-year-old men were obsessively asking me to come out and condemn you. I'll name one of them, Seth Dillon of the Babylon Bee. He lives in a Groyper simulation. And I'm just, to me, interested in the idea that the 18-year-old kid who's been banned everywhere, and you have to jump through the hoops to watch him on this obscure cozy.tv, has managed to completely send you mad. That's fascinating to me. Credit where credit is due. The Groypers are truly living in the minds of neocons. There's no question about it, okay? So for me, genuinely, I didn't watch your content. I got to tell you, you're not for moms. I'm very into the anti-vax stuff. I'm not tucking in at night after 5 days a week of a show and 4 kids being like, what's on Cozy TV? What's Nick Fuentes saying over at Cozy TV?
You're not?
No,
Oh,
I am not. And so the first time that I started seeing your clips was kind of at the same moment that I got fired, because at the same time-ish is when you got put back on Twitter. And I am active on Twitter, and I'm seeing clips here and I'm seeing clips there. And I did see the clips of you speaking about the Christ is King scenario, some which were hilarious, just kind of getting into the theology of it. And I'm starting to go, okay, I'm kind of getting this Nick Fuentes thing, especially when Jeremy Boring, then the CEO of Daily Wire, hosted this Christ is King audio live. And that was the first time I ever heard your backstory. So I genuinely was so, I guess, not blind to the Groyper movement, but how influential you were, that these people, as Jeremy admitted in that audio, were watching your show, which was on an app that I had never even heard about. So I want to give credit where credit is due. But your strategy of, I'm going to go on my show and call this person out for not having me on the show when you didn't ask to come on the show, and you had a line of communication because of some legal stuff that was happening in the background, where I was asking you to do a decent thing and tell the truth about the fact that we didn't have this relationship that I think some people thought that we had going on in the background, a political relationship or strategizing together. So I just think it was ridiculous. I'm like, if you wanted to come on the show, why didn't you just send a big boy message and say, hey, Candace, we should collab? And that's what I mean when I say I think you internet too hard. You think the way to get that is to go, Groyper war, Groypers, go at, and I am the exact opposite demeanor. If you do that, I will definitively not have you on the show. And the irony is, we had the discussion. So I think I messaged you and I was like, what's the deal with you on YouTube? If I have you on the show, we were just kind of getting set up here. Are you allowed to? And you answered and said, I don't know. You said, some people have had me on, some people have gotten hit. And I'm like, okay, well, we're still trying to figure this thing out. And the next thing I know, you've launched a Groyper war. And I'm going, if you think this is the last strategy you should possibly take if you ever want to get anything with me, I don't respond to anonymous accounts on, I'm sorry, I'm not 13. I have toddlers at home. I get the I want. And I say to them, if you would like something, you need to use your manners. You need to say, can I please have? And thank you. And that's how I felt you were kind of executing this request, was in a really immature way. It was just immature.
Well, I think you're kind of starting in the middle of the story, because when you left the Daily Wire, everybody was on Twitter and in your live chat and in the comments saying, we want the collab with Nick Fuentes. And you said in the live chat, we're going to do it. We have the screenshots in the live chat for your show. You said, we're going to do the collab. I have the screenshots, so, if this goes up, we'll post it.
Are you potentially speaking about a live chat that was going, and you think that I responded to somebody saying?
Your channel said, we're going to do the collab.
Okay, maybe are you talking about YouTube?
Yes.
Genuinely, I don't know what you're talking about, but we can add the screenshot. We can add it, because I definitively do not remember saying we were going to do the collab. Even if I indicated I did reach out to you and say, what's the deal? Because we were talking about, like I said, we were like, we should get him on.
Yeah.
But then in between me saying we should get him on and you saying, I don't know about YouTube, suddenly there was we're launching a war on her.
Well,
and then I was like, no, I don't want to do this.
Let's talk about that beginning of the story, because people were pushing for the collab, and there's a screenshot where you say, yeah, we'll do the collab. And this was a period of many months.
Okay, fact-checking Nick Fuentes again here. So he sent us 2 screenshots where he says that I said, we'll do the collab. And I do not believe these screenshots say that. So these are the ones that he sent us. Here's number 1. He doesn't show us what I was responding to, but we can guess because I said, yes, I would talk to Nick. Why not? So that makes me believe that the person probably said, would you ever have Nick on the show? Or would you ever speak to Nick Fuentes? And I said, yes, I would talk to him. Why not? I never said we were collabing. And then this is the second screenshot that Nick sent us. It reads, I will literally speak to anyone on my podcast. My podcast is not for crybabies who hate speech. So I'm not certain how he could have interpreted that as I confirmed I was doing a collab with him. But those are the screenshots he submitted. So I will allow you guys to interpret that yourself. Back into the conversation.
And then you go and do a Twitter space with Dan Bilzerian. And there was, I think one of those Jewish guys was on there. I forget his name. Mike something, Myers was on there. Andrew Meyer was on there.
Oh, yeah.
You brought him on there. I think Andrew Tate was on there. People said in your replies, get Dave Smith, get Dave Smith. You said he's invited to everything I do. All the replies said, get Nick Fuentes on there. I'm not banned on Twitter. And so, and here
but
was
that was after you had launched this, like.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah, I think it was.
I don't think it was. But either way, here's the point. It just felt like you were making excuses, which was, oh, well, it's the YouTube thing. Oh, well, it's a legal thing. If it's YouTube, we could have done it on my platform.
You know the legal thing was real. I still can't speak about what that legal thing was, but that was very real. That was very real. And I was.
Is it not in effect now? Has something changed?
Not for a discussion for another time, but the point being is, like, that wasn't a joke. You know that wasn't a joke. You were on the phone with my lawyers.
I know, but it was a legal thing.
The accusations that were being thrown at me were just inaccurate in regarding that legal thing. And so when I reached out to you to ask you to just clarify that this wasn't real, whatever it was, I was asking you to just do a decent thing. Like, that was not on a, okay, well, let's collab or not collab. It was like, hey, this is my real life. It's being impacted by something that I didn't do. No, but then you kind of, in a really crappy manner, spoke about that on your show, something that I was privately going through that is still lasting. Okay. I have a lot of stuff going on in the background. And I was just like, what kind of person is this? Like, like, I'm fighting for my life. I'm being attacked by Zionists. I've just gotten fired. I have kids at home. I mean, at no point you just go like, and then you knew that I had some legal stuff, drama going on in the background. At no point you just go like, maybe she genuinely just like, or I'm just going to reach out to her and say, hey, we're already talking. Do you want to maybe collab down the future? That's the adult thing to do. And going to your point, when I said he's always invited to anything I do, I literally had not invited Dave Smith. I would just...
Yeah, I know.
I had not invited him. I was just saying, if he wants to jump on and say, let me on, I'll let him on. That's it.
Yeah, well, and here's the thing. I think that you can't have your cake and eat it too, okay? Because you also went and said, I've never spoken to Nick Fuentes before in my life. But that was a lie.
Okay, but...
Or you didn't know, but we had spoken before.
Okay, yeah, let's clarify that. Yes, I was wrong that there was that one conversation you pointed out about when my husband was working for... what was the app called? Parlor app.
Parlor? Oh, I'm sorry. So there were 2, actually.
Yeah, but like, I mean, come on, Nick. The verse is like, we had this long relationship.
Okay, but we can't play this game now. We
what
can't
game?
play this. Because you can't then get on my case and say, well, look, I'm just going through a lot and I have this crappy stuff going on.
No,
and then
I'm
it's
just saying why
but
I
I don't know about the
screenshot,
but I forgot about the conversation
Nick,
and
that
the
was
other
from
one.
years ago. I mean, okay, yes, okay, you're right. At first, there was a conversation that you can read it
It's
live.
Convenient.
Well, we should throw it up. Let's throw it up and post so people can read what you're okay. Like back in 2019, what is it, 18, 19, there was a communication.
And then in 2022, during the Kanye thing.
Yes, and I've always been honest. I've talked about that many times. That was the first time I remembered us having a conversation was the Kanye stuff. So when I was saying the first time I spoke to him was over the Kanye thing, and I've been very honest about that.
You said that after, because first you said we had never spoken. And then I insinuated, oh, maybe that's not true. And then you said, oh, we talked during
I can legitimately tell you that that's factually you're very wrong, because I had to confront that because of some legal stuff that was going on. I was very open about the fact that I had a conversation with you when you were hanging out with Ye. You could talk about that openly right now. I couldn't care less. But the point is that what was the difference in what we're talking about is a communication about a certain situation versus like Candace and Nick had some like background relationship and we're coordinating. That's just not true, And so that was what I was trying to dispel, because people were very seriously creating an insane conspiracy theory that I was coordinating with you. It was insane. All I can say to you is that retrospectively it was insane. And so if I forgot one communication about Parlor, you are correct. I went and checked and I was like, yeah, no, he's right. I told him that my husband was not working, I think for like Google I don't know what you thought was happening, but it wasn't real. And I told you that. So I just kind of shut down some conspiracy that you were on. And then was the Kanye thing. And there were other people who genuinely believed that you and I were like in this communicative
Right.
relationship, coordinating, like I'm working with the Groypers. And it was just, I don't know what to say other than it was really loony. These were coming from older men. And I realized that you were kind of very effectively getting to people.
That's true. But yeah, I mean, look, and you know, it was a long time ago now, it was a year ago. I didn't prepare the timeline in advance, but the way that I recall, you said we had never talked before. Then you said, well, we talked once during Yay.
No.
I believe that was the case, but maybe I'm wrong about that. Like I said, I don't have it in front of me, but it felt like
that's true.
I felt like you weren't being completely forthcoming about
Please
it.
be forthcoming. I'm the most honest person in my audience, so nothing is off record. You can say whatever you want right now. Be forthcoming. What did I lie about? I did forget the parlor
You said we had never talked before. We had actually talked a couple of times before.
Yeah, but about the same situation. You get my point. We were dealing with something with Yay. This was not like Candace reaching out like, hey, Nick,
but that's
what's
not what
that
you said.
Groyper music?
You didn't say we talked about unrelated things and we've talked before.
Okay.
You said we've never talked before. I don't know anything about him. I don't know him.
I didn't know anything about you. That's the point. I knew that Yay was hanging out with you.
Why'd you say I was okay to Yay?
I said to Yay, the point being is that I said to Yay, based on my own assessment of things, like I thought that there was a bigger risk because somebody was getting involved with his campaign, and I had known for that individual to be open about blackmailing people. I obviously, as a friend of Yay, knowing everything that was going on, I was concerned. And I expressed that to you, and I said, you're in proximity to him. He's mad at me for this and that, because Yay was mad at me for a couple of days. And I said, please just tell him this. That was it. So our communication...
We talked about Milo, and then you vouched for me with Yay.
Yeah, and Milo and I have since...
Now you follow Milo on Twitter.
Yeah, Milo and I since have talked about it, because, and he respects the fact. That's why I said, I'm very honest, so you're not going to catch me here, Nick.
I'm not trying to catch you. You're trying to lecture me.
No, you can talk. I want you to be as open as possible about this, because I just think that there has been so much crap that's been said that's just untrue. Yes, the person was Milo. I wasn't going to identify him, but Milo and I have since talked about it because he recognizes that I was just concerned about Yay. It's the reason I communicated to you is because the person that I knew was not you. It was not Milo. It was Yay. And I was concerned, obviously, with everything that was going down. He had been at my house and things were going down. I was just concerned, and I wanted to make sure that I was protecting him, because what I knew from Milo publicly, because I didn't know Milo either. Have I had a correspondence with Milo in the past, similar to you? Yeah, I saw him at the David Horowitz Freedom Foundation, but I didn't know Milo like I didn't know you. And I was just trying to protect Yay. And so the extent to our conversation was about me trying to be a good friend to somebody else. It wasn't like this. And I told people that. I didn't tell the audiences that. What I'm saying is that I told...
You didn't tell the audience, but that's key, because I'm not a part of the other conversation.
No, I said to you, I said I didn't know you. I didn't know you. Just because I communicate with you about Yay doesn't mean that we know each other, Nick.
I don't know him. We've never talked. I've never had anything to do with him before.
Nick, that's not true.
Okay,
we never talked. That's not true.
That's what you said.
Okay.
And then I said, we did talk.
Okay.
And
we're going to give you the right to pull the clip of me saying I've never talked to Nick Fuentes, because I communicated with you about Yay. I was open about that.
Okay. Well,
and
but
since then, just to clarify, spoke to Milo about that, and said, look, he understands that was my perspective. Obviously, getting into the movement, just like you, when I first kind of was coming in, I was reading a lot of Milo's blogs, a lot of his writings up at Breitbart. And he kind of turned the lights on for me in terms of feminism and the BLM movement. So we never really had, I would say, the same exact thing. I didn't really know Milo. I knew his writing, I knew his work, but I didn't know him. So I just don't understand what I did wrong by saying that I don't know you. What do you want me to say? Make it up?
Well, once again, we're kind of massaging the words. You said we never talked. I know nothing about him. I don't know him. When we had talked, and then you went and changed the statement and said, "Oh no, we talked one time."
You got to pull it up.
Okay,
come on. You got to pull it up now.
We can't. I don't have it on me. I didn't know I was coming in. You said it wasn't an ambush. I thought we were talking about Iran.
You brought it up, but that's fine.
You brought it up. You wanted to litigate the beef. I'm happy to do it. I don't have the receipts prepared, but we could do it.
Perfect. I do not know Nick Fuentes. I don't know you. But you already know that. What I do know is that everyone can see what you guys are doing to me. Your pattern is well established.
There were other statements besides this tweet.
And the world is waking up to it. My crime is having stood up for myself against your network of smears. I'm responding to the ADL and saying I don't know you. I didn't know you.
But that's not the only statement. You said stuff on your show, and there were other tweets.
It was on my show.
I don't have it on me.
Okay,
if you want to come back and we can do a debate about it,
we're not going to do a debate about it. I'm just saying just so everyone can. This is pre-recorded, so I'm just going to say, if you do go home and find the clip of me saying something that you believe was lying, then I'm happy to share it because I don't lie to people. It's just not something that's like in my DNA. I'd rather just tell the truth and deal with the consequences. So I had two separate communications with you before I got fired, and they were limited to us discussing Parler and us discussing Yay. Would you think that's a fair assessment of?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Fine. Done. Okay, fact-checking Fuentes, because we told him, obviously, that he could send us anything in post and we would drop it in. He said that I denied that I had contact with him. This is the proof that he sent us right here. You can see that I tweeted on November 25th, 2022. I tweeted, I have never in my life been in contact with Milo Yiannopoulos or Nick Fuentes. This is not a personal shot at either of them. That is simply the truth. I met Milo twice, both times at the David Horowitz Freedom Center, where we were both invited as speakers years ago. As Nick insinuated, this was technically not true because I did have public contact with Nick that then kind of rolled into a private correspondence. So I'll read it to you. This is what I tweeted publicly. I tweeted, this isn't true, responding to Nick. He was tweeting something about Parler, which my husband was the CEO of Parler, so I was defending my husband. I said, this is not true. Apple was under serious pressure, which is why they reinstated the app. This is a victory. Short term, though, in my opinion, if they don't sue Apple. Referring to Parler again, I'm just out here defending my husband's honor. But to Nick's credit, I then, that right after, said this to him via DM, a private correspondence, basically just, again, talking about Parler and saying that I couldn't say anything just yet. And that was our correspondence that we had that I truly did not remember. You can see it is dated April 19th, 2021. So I was sincere when I said that I didn't have any contact with Nick in 2022, but I did forget this correspondence. So back to the conversation. But going on to the broader point that I wanted to make, I'm glad that we went through that because I think that there's been a lot of people on the internet that have said things that are not true. So that is the basis of the communications that we've had. And I was very aware of, obviously, like all of the Groypers tweeting when I got fired. Genuinely didn't know what the Groyper movement was outside of seeing you guys kind of pop up on college campuses and begin to ask some questions that I actually thought were very fair and questions that I hadn't considered. You know, why was I, when I was working at Turning Point USA, touring with Dave Rubin, who is a homosexual married man? Can you talk about, first and foremost, what a Groyper is and how the movement got started?
Well, it got started in 2019 when Charlie Kirk was doing his first big college tour. And I forget actually the first one. I think it was in Colorado. And a couple of fans of my show, I didn't tell them to do this. Actually, people had asked me before, should we do this? Is this a good idea? And I said, no, I don't think so. But two guys who watched the show, they went out on their own. And I think the one guy asked a question about legal immigration. You're against illegal, but you're for legal immigration. How's that conservative? And then another guy came up and he said something about Israel. You know, you seem to be Israel first. What about America? And the two clips blew up on Twitter, and I promoted them on my show. I said, that was unbelievable. That was really awesome. I said, because, you know, if we show up in MAGA hats and rosaries, who we are, you know, which is pro-Trump Catholics, and we present as the real right wing, this is unignorable, and people will start to ask these questions. So the following day, he did another event, I think, in Iowa. Once again, there were a couple of Groypers asking these types of questions. Then the third day, New Hampshire, same story. And I remember doing a show covering the latest batch of clips. It turned into a thing. We were covering them on the show every night, the clips of these questions. And at that time, Groyper was a meme. It was like Pepe the Frog. And there's a few variations. There's Pepe, Marv, Apu, and Groyper was one of them. And Groyper's like a big cartoon frog.
Why is it named Groyper?
I don't know.
I literally don't know what Groyper means.
It came from a Twitter account called That Groyper. He just named it Groyper.
Okay, so it just doesn't mean anything.
No,
okay.
Yeah, it was technically called Easter Toad was the drawing, the proprietary drawing. But then some Twitter users started calling it Groyper. And at that time, you know, people would personalize the Groypers and make them an avatar. So, you know, they'd have different themes and different personalities. And Groyper became synonymous with like a far right, like retard. Like a Groyper was like, this guy is painfully, obnoxiously far right.
Okay.
And so I said on my show, imagine you're Charlie Kirk. You're standing up there on the stage sweating, and you have a line of Groypers asking you questions about the USS Liberty and dancing Israelis. I said, what must be going through his head? And ever since then, they took the Groyper standing upright, because the famous picture is he's sitting down like this. But they took a picture of the Groyper standing upright, and there was a meme at the time of Alex Jones walking down an alleyway, and they copy-pasted a bunch of Alex Jones. They said it was an army of Alex Jones. And so someone took that meme and they did it with Groypers. They had an army of Groypers marching down the alley. And I said, that's us. That's the Groypers lining up to ask Charlie Kirk a question. So that's the origin of the name.
Okay, interesting. I was always wondering, I'm like, what does Groyper actually mean? And so it's a lot of people that have these anonymous accounts. And like I said, we'll show a clip of it. But I thought it was very interesting because it was, I guess, questions that I hadn't really grappled with, which is I'm on stage. I'm saying that I'm a Christian, and yet I'm touring with somebody who is a homosexual married man. How do I reconcile that? And rather than kind of getting the answer, and I think I particularly remember one clip with, what is his name? I'm totally blanking here. It's a Black Army vet. I know his
Rob
name.
Smith.
Rob Smith. It was a moment with Rob Smith. And I think somebody shouted down the person and said that they were homophobic. Like the question is homophobic. And at that moment I went, yeah, you can't do that. You got to actually answer the question. There could be an answer, but we can't be like the left and just calling people names because we don't maybe want to confront that there is some substance to this question.
Mm-hmm.
But then you guys kind of, or maybe it sounds like it did start as an online movement. Who are the Groypers behind the scenes? Do you have communication with these people? Yeah. They're real, obviously they're real human beings. But my point is that, like, is this movement, like you guys are on a group chat and you know these individuals? Can we get a demographic? Are they older? Are they younger? Who are the Groypers?
Well, they are real human beings. They're all young white men. Or there's other men, too. I mean, some of them are Hispanic, some of them are Black, some of them are Jewish for that matter. But they're mostly young men, college age, Generation Z, some of them even high school aged. Okay. And all of them very Christian, very Catholic also. They're fans of the show. You know, a lot of people say have this cult-like following. People watch the show and they adopt the political viewpoint, the religious viewpoint. And so they're basically far-right, pro-America, Catholic, at that time, big Trump supporters and young guys.
Okay. All right. We have to watch another Nick Fuentes clip. I think we should definitely watch. Let's watch the first one that you showed me, Skylar.
Why is it that Candace Owens will interview Harvey Weinstein before she'll talk to me?
So true.
Am I really that
so glad you
bad?
agree with yourself.
People said when Candace Owens split with Daily Wire, people begged her to do a collaboration with me. They said, talk to Nick Fuentes. You stole all his talking points. Talk to Nick Fuentes. You get all your ideas from him, all your slogans. He was a martyr. He made the sacrifices that made it popular for you to do this. She said, oh, I can't because I'm on YouTube. But I also can't have him on my website because of some lawsuit.
That's so crappy to me. That part's really crappy to me. I have to say, watching it back, no, I do want to say, we don't have to get into it, but that's crappy to me because it was like, I don't know. I just think that I try to do a really good job of being a human being offline. You know what I mean? And if people are going through stuff or whatever, and that was real. Like, that's not like, oh my God, like she's trying to be a victim. It was very real. My life was kind of, you saw, it was thrown up in the air, but we don't need to focus on that. But I do want to get to the point. Do you actually believe that I was getting all my ideas from you? Like, do you actually believe that I was watching Cozy TV? Because then somebody showed me a clip of you saying the same thing, because I guess you said in the same week, or you said last week, I was talking about this. Now this week, Candace is talking about it. And it was pertaining to the PBS documentary, The Savage Peace, which was about the German genocide that took place after the war had ended. And that documentary opened up my eyes a lot to the fact that we had only been told kind of one strand regarding World War II. And I told my audience they should watch it. And there was a clip of you kind of suggesting that I got that from you. So did you actually believe that I had gotten that from you, or that I was watching your show and stealing your ideas?
Not that one. I don't know what that's all about, the German thing. But look, I mean, you left Daily Wire with the whole Christ is King, America First. For years, that's what I was known for. Now, if you want to say you never heard of me until a couple of years ago.
No, I heard of you in 2019.
You said earlier, though, that, you know, you didn't really watch anything or know anything until about a year ago.
Yeah.
If that's what you say, okay, that's fine. But it'd be a pretty stunning coincidence. And I will say I heard from other people. I'm not going to say who, but I heard from a mutual friend. He watched my show back in 2020. Maybe that person's lying. I don't know that. But I'd heard that from multiple people. So.
You can name the person because I'm telling you. So, and I'll ask you this question again. So you said Christ is king. So that's very interesting. So you think that any person that says Christ is king?
Oh no, I didn't say that.
Okay, because I actually do want to understand this. I'm genuinely pushing back here because I was very confused by this. I'm like, Ye just named his whole album Jesus is King, right? Or 2 albums ago was Jesus is King. It was definitely a moment, a cultural zeitgeist that had this rapper to come out and start singing about Christ like he did early on when he did the Jesus Walk stuff. And I was just like, does Nick actually believe? Like, I genuinely was not watching your show. It's the only thing I can tell you.
Okay.
I have friends that were, I will definitely say, male men between the ages of like 30 and 40 are watching your show.
Yeah.
And I would say 40 and beyond, like I just said, are watching your show. I would imagine you have a very male, internet savvy audience. I am terrible at the internet. Like, I mean, it is embarrassing. I'm basically a grandma when it comes to the internet. My husband thinks he's like, how are you a person that people watch the internet? You don't even know how to use the internet. I just don't love tech. Tech is not really my thing. I like to communicate. I'm a woman. I like to speak, but I don't really like to figure out how all this stuff works. And so once you got banned, I wouldn't have seen your stuff. But then as soon as you were back on Twitter, I started seeing your clips all the time because you started trending. Like you were trending the day that you got let back onto X, you were trending. And I was like, okay, Nick is trending. Clips recently just were trending about you. So I think if you had been on X that whole time and you said, you were like, you've never seen my stuff, that would be a little ridiculous. But genuinely, like when you're starting a family and like as soon as I am done with the podcast, it got to be like straight back into mommy mode. I just don't think that many women are watching you. Is that fair?
Yeah, like I said, if that's what you're saying, then I believe you.
100% the truth. Genuinely didn't get any of my ideas from you and then was being accused of getting all of my ideas from you. So obviously there must have been naturally something that was happening where what I was saying or what I was noticing, people were going, oh, Nick Fuentes has spoken about this already.
Yeah. Well, I mean, those were like things that I was known for when we would disrupt Turning Point, which is where you worked at, or Daily Wire.
I saw the Groyper stuff.
Which you also worked there. They would go in chanting, Christ is King, and they were the Groypers. And if you were aware of the Groyper War and Ye24 and me on Twitter last year,
I saw the literal clips of them asking questions that were going viral.
Okay.
They weren't chanting Christ is King. They were just the literal clips of them. And I thought it was smart. I think it made me challenge some of my ideas. So I will give you credit where credit is due, or the students that were asking those questions, credit where credit is due.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times conservatives, we say things and we say them because everyone else is doing it. Same thing with the reason I think both of us started as being pro-Israel. It just was everybody else is doing it. It feels good. You are kind of young and excited about the ideas. And then you kind of go, oh, wait, something's wrong. And both of us kind of dealt with this punch in the face.
Right. Yeah, well, I was 18. You know what I'm saying? Different. I was 18. So, I was, I don't know that I was doing it because everybody else was doing it. I was doing it because that was just the first thing I read, because that was the stuff that was out there. And then, and then you went through it. I mean, and hey, and likewise, credit where it's due. Maybe I've been unfair to you. I don't know you, and like you said, we talked once and twice.
We finally got there.
No, but it's true. And this is the first time I've met you and I don't know you. So, and I'm willing to admit if I'm wrong, maybe I've been unfair to you. But for what it's worth, they did put you through the ringer, and I don't even need to tell you that. You know it, and everyone knows it, and it sucks.
I actually thought you were a Fed at one point.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm sitting here going, this makes no sense. I literally just am being punched in the face 1,000 times. Everyone's coming after me. What did I do? I tweeted the hashtag Christ is King and like my whole life is over. And now I kind of understand that it was because people were watching your show and they were.
Right.
And truly, people can just be ignorant. It's just, like I said, it's not female content. I would not describe you as like all the moms are lining up to watch Nick Fuentes.
Some moms love me.
Some moms love you, I'm sure. But as a rule, I don't think that we're watching your show. And so I think it was kind of this thing that they definitively believe that there was some sort of coordination going on between you and I.
No, there wasn't.
It was, it sucked. I'm not going to lie. It was not an easy year last year. And so when on top of that, you start telling people to attack me.
I didn't really tell people to attack you.
Okay, fair. I might be misquoting there, but like they got the idea that they should start attacking me. I was like, okay, this guy must be working with the ADL because the ADL had just attacked me. And then it was like 2 weeks later, you're attacking me and people that watch your show are attacking me. And I'm just going, what the heck is going on in my life right now? Again, when you're in the moment, you can kind of believe something to be true. But I definitely thought that you maybe were like a total Fed.
Yeah, I heard that you heard that from Tucker. Is that true?
No.
No?
Mm-mm.
Yeah, because I heard that, and that was another
I think a
thing
lot
that-
of people, by the way, have asked that question, like, is he a
Yeah.
Fed? But I did not hear from Tucker, like, Nick Fuentes is definitely a
Well,
Fed.
Tucker is pushing that around. It's like a whisper campaign. He said that to Alex Jones. He said that to a lot of people. So,
Well, I thought I said it to people because
Yeah.
I was definitely
yeah.
saying, like, he's got to be a Fed because
and
what
that
is
got
he
back to me,
doing?
and that was part of why I was in particular a little upset towards the middle of the beef
Okay,
last year.
fair. But I really did believe it because
Yeah.
I was just, it didn't make sense to me. I'm like, what am I doing that everybody everywhere is upset with me? You
Well,
know?
and I think suffice to say, unfortunately, in this space, there is a lot of distrust, I think, on both sides
Yeah.
because there's so much deception and so much intimidation and bullying and these shady tactics that, when you don't know everybody, you really don't know what to make of everybody else. I'm an unknown quantity to you. I come from a different world. I'm a young man. I'm on the political outside. I'm on Cozy TV. You're an unknown to me. You're in the belly of the beast at Turning Point and Daily Wire. And I don't mean that to cast aspersions, but just to say we're coming at each other from completely different worlds. And I've always been in my world. You're sort of leaving that world and coming to these views. And I think there's sort of a mutual distrust and maybe misunderstanding, which is why it's good to sit down and chat,
Yeah. Well, and by the way, you can say whatever you want on your show, but I would just encourage you to, like, maybe sometimes think people are just not where you're at sometimes. And I have to check myself at times. And I think
No one's where I'm at.
having the
I'm
exercise.
in the future.
Okay. You're with Ye in the future. Ye somewhere in the
I'm
future.
5 years ahead. You
Okay,
say,
so let me ask you some of these questions. So you do have ideas that there shouldn't be interracial marriage.
Mhm.
I've seen those clips. Can you explain why that is?
Yeah, it's not that I don't think there should be interracial marriage. I'm Catholic, so as you know, it's not a sin to be in an interracial marriage or relationship. But I am racist, I would say. I believe in the races. I believe there are white people and black people and Hispanics and Asians, and I think that it's a core part of our identity. It's who we are. And there's like this conservative reflex to say, we're colorblind. Race doesn't mean anything. And, Pat Buchanan said this. He said, it's not everything, but it isn't nothing. And I definitely lean more towards the latter, which is it really is a core part of who we are. Our culture, our heritage, our ancestors, our customs, all of it. It's not that I don't think that two people can fall in love from different races. Of course they can. And they have throughout history. And the races have mixed throughout history and assimilated. But for someone like myself, I always say on my show, it's just my value. I want to marry someone that looks like me, that comes from a similar background, because I want my kids to look like me. I want my grandkids to look like me.
But sorry, I just want to make sure, did you say I'm a racialist or I'm a racist?
For a long time, I would say I'm racialist. Now I just say I'm racist.
Okay, so when you say you're racist, because these definitions get changed around, racist, anti-Semitism gets expanded. What do you mean when you say I'm a racist? Because I think most people watching this would go, if you are a racist
Right.
in the traditional sense of the term, why are you on this podcast, right? Wouldn't you just go, you know what, Candace is black and therefore I don't want to speak to her.
Right.
Certainly not going onto your show and saying, why won't Candace have me on? That doesn't really seem to line up with
Right.
the traditional sense of the idea racist. So
Yeah, and I'm using it. I'm being a little tongue-in-cheek. I mean, for the purpose of understanding, I'd say my views are I'm a racialist. But I do think that we need to deconstruct this idea of racism in the sense that, look, you're black, I'm white. It is what it is. For my entire life, people have been walking around on eggshells about the subject of race, about white people being racist. Can I say this? Can I say that? Can I have this opinion? And me, I'm sort of, Gavin McInnes said it like this. He said, you're kind of post-racist. You're sort of after this craze where everything was racist. It's sort of this recognition that we live in a heavily racial world. And, look, sometimes we have racist feelings like I want to live in a white neighborhood. I don't want to live in a black neighborhood. If they were all like you, obviously it'd be a different story. But when we think of a black neighborhood, we know what that means and why the property value is
But that's
cheap.
Black American. So this is why I want to understand this idea better because, and this is kind of something my cousin has said, which I guess you could say is a racist statement, but she says that white people in America are the white trash of white people in the world, meaning that like there's a special category of uniquely that you don't see when you're dealing with like white Americans here, that if you went across to like Switzerland, you wouldn't see this version of a white person necessarily, or you maybe went to the continent of Africa, you don't see this version of a black person either. Like even if you went to the tribes out in Africa that still exist, they would be a far cry from a black American living in a neighborhood in Compton, right? So I'm trying to understand if you think that it's all Black people are like this, or if your world is kind of colored by this is what's going on in America, this has failed for 1,000 reasons. Welfarism has definitely, Black people in 1940s, stand up. My grandfather, I talk about that denigration and the corrosion of culture. Yeah. That's happening. White, Black, whatever you want to name it, there is this intentional corrosion of culture. So do you think it's literally, well, this is just what a Black person is when they come out? Or do you think that post welfare, LBJ, Great Society, this is what Black Americans have become, and I have a right to respond to that and say that as a white man, I don't want to live there?
Well, I think it's more nature than people would like to believe. There's this classic tension of, is it nature, is it nurture, is it cultural, or is it intrinsic, is it racial? And I've always been on the latter side of this among conservatives. Conservatives like to say it's all culture. Black America is the way it is because of hip hop music and the Great Society and that kind of stuff. And I think the uncomfortable reality is a big part of it is intrinsic. One of the big arguments against the abolition of slavery in the 1860s is that, when Europeans colonized Africa, they hadn't discovered the wheel. There's no two-story buildings. There's no writing. There's no written language. Missionaries had to go to Africa in the last century and invent it for the African people because there's no recorded history. They didn't have writing.
So Egypt is not in Africa.
Well, Egypt is a different race. The Egyptians were not Black.
Okay, but you said when they went to Africa, so I just want to...
The interior of Africa in the late 19th century. Scramble for Africa.
Okay, so we're now knocking Egypt out of Africa.
Well, Egypt is part of northern Africa, sub-Saharan Africa.
You said Africa, so I'm not trying to get a gotcha. I'm just responding. You're saying Africa.
Sure. Yeah.
It's in Africa. It's Egypt. It's kind of ridiculous to say there was no written language. Well, so I'm just trying to get you to
sure. Egyptians are not Africans.
If I'm not pushing back, the internet will. So
Egyptians are not racial Africans. When I say African, I'm saying sub-Saharan Africans.
Sub-Saharan, okay.
Black people because it is a different race. In sub-Saharan Africa, and Europeans did not penetrate that until the late 19th century. They didn't have any of this. To the extent that you have infrastructure in Africa, it's from the Muslims in the Sahel and the Maghreb in northern Africa, where the Arabs colonized. And then you had, Carthage and Egypt. You had ancient civilizations. But sub-Saharan Africa, they didn't have that. You take these people out of that land and put them here, and they're enslaved people. You let them free in a modern, liberal republic. They're not going to succeed. It's not going to go well for them. And that was one of the arguments against abolition. People said if you free them without any assimilation, without any kind of process for them to be acclimated, they're going to die. And that's exactly what happened. Many of the bottom 10% of the lowest IQ Africans just died off for generations. And it had pardon the expression, but it had a eugenic effect because over time, if the weakest are dying off, that's one argument for why Blacks in America have a standard deviation higher IQ than the Blacks in sub-Saharan Africa. So, so I do believe there is something intrinsic going on there. And what makes people uncomfortable about this is the idea that it's unchangeable. There's something about, and this is why I'm a Catholic, we do have an inherent desire for universalism. We do believe that there's a common humanity and a common human community and all of that. We hate the idea that we're born a certain way and we can never change. And that's just the way it is. And we even think about this in terms of, it's become not so popular these days to tell children, you can be whatever you want to be. Because we know that's not the case. Some people are tall, some people are short, some people are smart, some dumb, some ugly, some handsome. That's why, by the way, incel-dumb is a big part of this also.
So you believe these are immutable characteristics that are assigned at birth?
I think that, yes.
For the most part.
Things like race, all those attributes are immutable and unchangeable.
But they have changed. Just factually speaking, they have changed.
They change over time, over the generations.
Okay. So then you don't think it's immutable. Because if this was an immutable characteristic.
Individual person.
Okay. So you're saying that if you are born at this space and time as a Black person in America, here is the cards that you're dealt with and you can't change that over time.
Something like IQ does not change. No, doesn't change wildly. It only changes genetically over. IQ is a big one, and that changes. That's a genetic trait. And so that can change over the generations, but not, you can't take an individual that's 75 IQ, which is the average in West Africa, and take them to 100.
So two dumb people can't produce a smart person.
I believe they can, actually.
Yeah.
But.
So does that kind of debunk your.
No. because it's rare that happens. But IQ is a heritable trait, so it's unlikely that happens.
Okay.
And do you not recognize that there's group differences in IQ? Or?
I think that there's group differences, but
Okay.
I wouldn't say, and the reason why I'm pushing back on this is because those perspectives that you hold, Thomas Sowell did a really good job debunking that. And I think the book is called Intellectuals and Race, and he opens up and makes a very sound argument that these characteristics are not immutable and that it can be your environment. And he kind of goes back and discusses, like, who had the highest IQ and who now has the highest IQ. And so I just disagree with you fundamentally, but you have a right to have that perspective.
So you don't think that there's group differences on average between the races?
I think, just to be clear, I think there would be group differences if you took, like we were talking about, an American versus somebody who graduates college in Europe. There'd be tremendous differences. Not
tremendous, but yeah, there would be slight differences.
Yeah.
But you don't think that
think
racially there's differences between races?
I think, yeah, because we have huge differences culturally. So going to your point of saying, I don't want to live in a black neighborhood, well, neither does LeBron James when he gets money, right? And there's a reason for that, because there is something that's happening culturally in Black America that's been going on for a very long time. But that thing, I would argue, didn't exist in...
What about in Africa and Haiti? I mean, they're killing and eating each other in Africa and Haiti. Everywhere where they are, you have these problems.
Yeah, I'd like to look into, and I'm pleading ignorant, but I've heard some things about what happened in Haiti and what the Clinton Foundation did there. So I think I'd have to look more into the history of Haiti to be able to push back on that at all. I don't think I agree with that.
What about all of Africa then? There's not one country in sub-Saharan Africa that's successful. Not one. They're all least developed countries. They're all failed states.
This kind of reminds me, and we could kind of flesh out this conversation together, and I'm not perhaps ready to have it fully, but I do remember going back to Dave Smith where he was conceding a point on, well, all of these other Middle Eastern countries, no, you wouldn't want to live there. You'd want to live in Israel. In my mind, I'm going, well, because you just keep bombing the crap out of them if they ever try to get ahead. I remember watching this clip of him saying that, going, why don't these countries get ahead? And kind of going back in my mind to the Gaddafi speech where he was speaking essentially about, here's what we got to do in Libya to get ahead. Here's what we're going to do with the dollar, and we're going to be progressive and this and that. And they killed him. And then what happened to those Libyan refugees? Suddenly they're now pouring into, just like he said was going to happen, that they're now pouring into the European continent, and Europeans are complaining, who are these people? And so the question is, are we allowing, because I'm like, Africa's a pretty rich country. Like, why aren't Africans controlling the diamond trade? Who's taking all of the diamonds so that they can't control the diamond trade? And how long have these people been doing that, being essentially culture vultures? That's kind of the journey that I've been on now in terms of really trying to go back and look into history to see what's happened. And I never trust myself when I have a perspective now, because I realize how much of my opinions and beliefs were shaped by the public school system. And so I don't think you're right. I think that there has been a very sophisticated effort to, just like you would say now, in terms of people that are intentionally attacking Anglo-Saxons. I'm just learning about that there were these books that were written to, we must genocide the Anglo-Saxons, that were going on for a lot longer than I realized. History didn't begin with World War II, but I think it would take a lot of time to kind of unpack that.
Yeah.
Like, are we stopping people from getting ahead just because, I don't know.
That just sounds, being honest with you, that just sounds to me like a left-wing argument when they say, why don't these countries get ahead? Colonialism, you're a colonizer. It's like, okay, but when we got there, they had no development. When we got to Africa, they had no technological development.
So you think that even if we weren't at war, and sure, you could say that you think that's a leftist argument. I would only push back on that because I've learned so much about just like recent history that I didn't know. But you think that the Middle East, like if we had done nothing in terms of the Middle East, that they would just be savages and just be like, America didn't do anything it doesn't set anything backwards, and you're just like bombing a place.
Yeah, kind of. I think that we did set them back because when they don't have political order, it prevents development and investment and things like that. But, again, when you look at the antecedents of all these, the history didn't start, like you said, with World War II in the 20th century. There's a reason that European civilization created this enormous gap between them and everybody else. And I don't think it was that it was white supremacy or it was unfair or something like that. I think it's because Europeans are smarter. I think that on average, Europeans are
smarter. So to use
smarter.
your argument against you, that could be said about Ashkenazis. So if you're sitting here saying, I believe in some conspiracy and that it's a coordinated effort and blah, 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 they could look at you and say, that's a leftist argument. We're just smarter.
I think they are smart.
They are smart. Smarter.
They're
the
probably,
smartest.
Well, I would say this. I would say they're probably as smart as the smartest white race. But the difference between the Jews and the white people is that they work as a team. And so if you look at, for example, things like transportation, white people invented every mode of transportation. Railroad, cars, airplanes, all of it. When you look at fields of knowledge, white people invented all that. Chemistry, anthropology, all that stuff. So white people really did give birth to the modern world in a major way. Jewish people are high verbal IQ because they're lawyers. They're rabbis. That's what a rabbi is a lawyer. That's what the Talmud is. It's a lawyerly back and forth. And so they're skilled at some things, and you're not wrong. They're extremely educated. They're extremely intelligent. They're a unique case where, 2% of the population overrepresented 2,000%. Are they 2,000% smarter? Answer is no. Because if you look at the standardized testing, the top scores in the high school standardized test are almost all Asians in math and science. Asians aren't overrepresented in power. It's Jewish people. So Jewish people are not, proportionally as more intelligent as they are more overrepresented. And that goes to their real superpower, which is they're an organized minority. An organized minority will be the disorganized majority. As far as Africa is concerned, they didn't have the wheel. We got there, they didn't have the wheel. And it's unfortunate. It's not anything that people are happy about. I don't believe that makes Africans inferior. But I do think that explains their relative level of development that has been persistent over centuries, millennia.
Yeah. I would probably just disagree with that point altogether. Okay, so then at least you are agreeing that Jewish people are just born smarter.
Yeah, they're very high IQ. I don't know that they're smarter than white people, but they're...
Well, that's what the results say.
That's what some results say. Depends on what results you're looking at.
Okay. I thought that was kind of the... maybe I'm just reading it in one term, but I'm pretty sure that I read somewhere that Ashkenazis have the highest IQs.
They like to embellish that. And there's different kinds of IQ. I think Chinese people probably have the highest IQ, Chinese or Japanese.
But how do you pick and choose what you believe and what you don't believe and then form a basis? I definitely believe that Black people are dumb, but I totally don't necessarily believe, I'm obviously being a little bit hyperbolic here, but I totally don't necessarily believe that Ashkenazis are the smartest. How do you...
Well, I said they're probably among the smartest races. As to who's the smartest, it's tough to say. And I think that Jewish people do embellish that for obvious reasons. Now, there are some studies that say that Ashkenazi Jews do have the highest average IQ, and that does exist.
Yeah, but so then for me, the reason why I'm skeptical of it all, to be honest with you, is because I'm skeptical of history full stop, right? So when you're like, well, this is what we did.
What do you mean, all of history? Or
skeptical of history full stop because we're living in a present right now where they're lying about what happened yesterday. And then when I realized, when you completely remove something that would obviously inform our perspectives in a different way, as I covered on my show this week, the Havara agreement between the Zionists and the Nazis, that's kind of a pretty big thing to not teach people in school that would maybe inform and make us ask some questions. When you totally remove a German genocide and only focus on one genocide or don't focus on speaking about the Bolshevik Revolution, I now have a lot of questions about history full stop. And so he who prints the textbook is king. Agreed. And so if you are coming up with a concept this is an immutable trait, and I know because I read or I learned this at school or this textbook or I read this book, he who prints the textbook is king. And I'm kind of learning that right now in terms of Hollywood Babylon, the relationship that the deep state has had with publishing agencies for a reason. You know this. I know this. You can't even get your book published.
Right.
If you want to get your book published because they're controlling the press, that's kind of been a running theme. Certainly was the reason why the Russian Tsar, they were pamphleteers at that time, but certainly was the reason that he got overthrown was that they realized the power of the press. And so when people have perspectives like you and they're base it on historical knowledge, this person invented the wheel, I'm I don't really know what's up and what's down, to be honest with you. I don't even believe in the moon landing.
Tartaria.
So, there you go. There's another one. There's something there. That's very funny. I would.
Not kidding.
But the point being is that, so the more that I learn, the one thing that I learn is that we know very little. And so I would never make a sweeping conclusion like that confidently. It could be that some groups are more evil. They're
Yeah,
willing to
well.
do stuff that you wouldn't do. They're willing to take your entire culture, your ideas, and purport that it was theirs. And that's something that we're kind of tackling in my book club right now, because we're realizing that the elites very much believed in this sort of Kabbalistic sexual ritual magic, but actually they stole it from Egyptians. And like Sigmund Freud was obsessed with the Egyptians, and we talked about Aleister Crowley. And so the more I learn about what they were obsessed with, I'm like, okay, so you're supposed to be like the brightest people in the world and you've had wealth forever. But I think you're willing to do more that most people that just have like a discerning, I don't know, just have the Holy Spirit, like, just wouldn't do. And so does the most evil person get to the top? And then they get to say, well, we're just like what's going to happen, for example, bring it back to what we've been discussing. And I will give a specific example. I won't even mince words here. It shocked me to learn that Armand Hammer, do you know Armand Hammer, the actor?
Yeah.
He is racially Jewish. You know, sometimes it's race, sometimes it's ethnicity, sometimes it's religion, who knows? But Armie Hammer's family backstory is that his however many great-grandfathers named Armand Hammer was named Arm and Hammer, literally, okay? Because he was considered Stalin and Vladimir Lenin's favorite Jew, okay? Fascinating. And so what he would do is he would go between Russia and America. He would set up like all of these. His father was Julius Hammer, and he established the Diamond District. So you're telling me that when Christians were being mass murdered and their belongings were being taken, you got these guys going back and forth, establishing districts in America. They're peddling art. He started peddling art. He started peddling diamonds. I think that's stolen. Okay. So if our American history is going to teach us that, like, oh, like the reason they established Armand Hammer's fortune is like they opened all these art galleries, it's stolen. You stole this from Christians that were being murdered and had all their stuff taken. We can apply that logic to what's happening in Palestine. Everyone thinks about, okay, it's very clearly what's happening is an ethnic cleansing. Where's all that stuff going? Are we going to in the future go, well, Palestinians just couldn't get ahead because, you know, they're just not that smart. You know, fundamentally, if you look at the IQ of Palestinian, the reason why they got ahead is because they weren't that smart and the Israelis were just really smart, or no, the Israelis were just evil. And so I am not comfortable with the conclusion that you have arrived at, because I just pay attention to what's happening now and what limited research that I've done. I'm like, well, some people are just a little more evil. They'll rewrite the books, and 50, maybe 100 years from now, they're going to say the Palestinians never had that land. And it was really a matter of people lying, and it was anti-Semitic, and we'll be none the wiser.
Right.
Fair?
I disagree. I just fundamentally disagree. I think that, you know, it's such a one-sided, it's unfortunate, but it's so one-sided, just a chronic lack of development and persistent underclass status and lack of contributions to mankind. I mean, certainly in the arts and in athletics, but no inventions, no philosophers, no true great masterpieces, anything like that, in terms of fine art, really. And then you have the whole planet is like this, you know? I mean, if half of Africa was super developed or halfway developed and the other half wasn't, maybe you'd have an argument, but it's whether they're socialist or capitalist, whether they got colonized or not, whether they got freed from slavery in 1800 or in 1860, or it's the same story everywhere. There's not one written language among them. You know, you talk about who controls the printing press. They don't have books. They don't have words to put in the books. And I think that, you know, it's a sad fact of the world, but it's something we have to deal with. And to me, that's the only conclusion that satisfies. And don't get me wrong, I get where you're coming from. I'm not, you know, I'll give you an example. My family lived in Chicago for 4 or 5 generations. And my parents and my grandmother, they had a security firm in the city. They taught cops and security guards how to shoot their guns and gave them licenses and things like that. And almost all their clientele were black. And when I was growing up, this was impressed upon me at an early age. They always said the older generations in Chicago, when my grandmother was growing up in the projects, when my parents were running this business in the 80s and 90s, they said they were the most polite, the most pious, the most considerate. Right. Some of them couldn't read, though. You know, they would come in and not be able to read, but they were less dysfunctional than my family. You know, my grandmother, her mother had mental illness, and she would look outside the window in the projects and see a black family across the way, and they were sitting around the table holding hands saying grace, and it was an intact family. So I completely agree with you. So, obviously, there's a cultural destruction Obviously, there's a cultural decline, but I think that was constant, even though the older generation was more genteel. I think that, honestly, that came from oppression. That came from a society where they were the minority. There was racism, there was abuse, there was segregation, and I think that made Black people meek. And if you look, the out-of-wedlock birth rate started to blow up, not after Great Society in the late 60s, but in the 50s during the Civil Rights era. And I think that that was sort of a regression to the mean moment. And, again, I think that it's not that Black people can't be good people. There aren't smart Black people, or there aren't, incredible Black people. I'm sitting across from one right now, or yay, and everything like that. But on the whole, on average, and there's billions of Black people, they do have that lower level of development, and I think that's why they underperform. And
yeah, I think it's totally ignorant. We can disagree on that, but I think it would be the same as saying, like, we look at women today who are all a bunch of hoes, and like that's kind of just become the thing. Like, this is what women are, and then kind of looking at this moment in time and saying, like, this is just who they are. It's like women, as soon as they come of age, they just want to like be on screen shaking their butts because they're all low IQ and they need men to do this or whatever. It's like, no. The culture has been corroding for a very long time, and I don't accept the argument that it's because women are women and that's just who they all are deep down on the inside. I find that I do think that in time you might move away from that.
Okay, I'm open-minded. Yeah,
we'll see. Okay, so you are a racist. You accept that. You are anti-Semitic. I don't like actually using that word because even that is what I mean, like trickery, where it's like Semitic. Palestinians are Semitic,
right.
So it's nothing more anti-Semitic than blowing up Palestinians. Are you a Jew hater?
No, I don't hate anybody.
Do you hate Jews?
I don't hate Jews. I don't hate anybody.
You don't hate anybody? Okay. And your faith, you don't find that saying that you're a Catholic while also saying that you don't believe that whites and blacks should be married, or you don't believe in interracial marriage for whatever reason, that doesn't conflict with your Catholicism?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, but you said that like that's not a Catholic perspective.
It's not a sin. The Catholic Church doesn't say it's a sin to mix races, but there have been various Catholic authors that have said that it's not conducive to a long-term marriage to mixed races because you have this clash, you have this dissonance between cultures, between different upbringings. And so they say if the selfless goal of a marriage is to rear children and you want to make that as conducive as possible, then you should marry within your race. It's not a sin if you don't.
Which Catholic author?
I don't know off the top of my head, but there are Catholic theologians that have said that. It's not conducive to a long-term marriage and stable.
Okay, jumping in here, even though he didn't say that he would produce a document, I thought it was important to fact-check this one, obviously, because I don't want people to walk away with a perspective that it's a Catholic teaching or a Catholic idea or a Catholic theology that people shouldn't be marrying outside of their race. So I gave him an opportunity and told him it was important to me if he could supply us with the name or the reading. And this is what he came back with that we were able to fact check as being an accurate quotation from Thomas Aquinas. The quotation reads, "It is less fitting to marry one who is far removed from us in customs and manners, lest the mutual fellowship be hindered." Doesn't say anything about race. I certainly don't disagree with that whatsoever. And so I am not clear on how that could be interpreted as being about race. But again, the only reason I wanted to fact check that is because it's really important for people who are obviously having faith-based discussions to know that that is not a Catholic perspective. All right, let's get back into the conversation.
And by the way, the statistics bear this out. There's more mental illness, more domestic abuse in mixed race households. It depends on which ones. Some are worse than others in terms of the statistics. But obviously, I mean, look, at the end of the day, elephant in the room is you're a black woman in a mixed marriage. So obviously we have different beliefs on this.
If we don't, listen, I'm never going to obviously adopt your beliefs on it. I just think it's patently wrong.
But do you understand why I would want to have grandchildren that are white?
I don't have an issue with you saying you want your kids to look like you.
But do you understand why I would believe that or feel that way?
No, because I'm not white. I don't understand.
What about your grandchildren being black for that matter then?
Well, I'm mixed race, so that I just feel like each kid comes out looking different. It's kind of incredible. So I think that when you actually have children, you realize like it's incredible how like my daughter is a little bit darker, but she looks like my husband. And then like my son's whiter, but he looks just like me. And I think that's kind of one of the exciting parts of being in a mixed race relationship. I'm always like, oh, I wonder what this kid's going to come out looking like. If you're saying that generations down, like 3 generations down, it'd be possible that you could just have all black kids or something, would that bother you? You'll probably be dead. Before that happened, you'd probably be dead.
I'm alive
But
now, and I
no,
don't
but
love
I'm
the
saying is
idea.
that like by the time you could breed it out, so to speak,
Mhm.
you'd be dead. So I'm just answering your question. Like it doesn't bother me at all.
Yeah.
No, obviously not.
I'm saying, but do you understand why I would feel that way?
If I understood it, I wouldn't be in a mixed race relationship. I don't understand it,
But you
but
have
I
no
accept
empathy
it.
then for like
No,
you can't step outside of your
no, I kind
situation.
of no. I mean, no, I'm not. I don't need to have. How would I have empathy for it? I mean, I don't feel that way.
Okay.
So it's just something that we disagree on.
Well,
which is fine.
I'm saying that because I actually can understand the appeal of a mixed race relationship. I get it. I mean, I find other races attractive also. And, if I was in love with a person from another race, I would probably want to build a life with them also. But my values are not just who I'm in love with and things like that. It's also my heritage, my identity, my race. And, I like the idea. It is important to me. My parents look a certain way. Their parents look a certain way. We come from a certain place. I like the unbroken chain. And I want my grandchildren and great-grandchildren to have a similar complexion. I want them to have similar hair. Because these kinds of things, they echo. We're all connected, not just in time horizontally, but vertically across the generations. And so the idea that, 2 or 3 generations down the line, one of my children bears no resemblance to me at all, it's almost as if we're not related. It's almost as if I never existed. And there's something very disturbing to me about that. And I can understand why people are okay with that. Because people have various feelings about race. They say, I don't care about my race or whatever, but I do.
Okay, that's totally fine. And like I said, it's not a Catholic doctrinal perspective.
Yeah.
It's your perspective. You're entitled to it. You can marry whoever you want. That's the point. It's a free country. But would you make the argument that it should be legislative?
No, I don't think it should be legislated at all.
Okay.
No.
It's just your perspective. Yeah.
It's my value.
Listen,
I
by the
value it.
way, you're allowed to have a type. That's one of the things I think I don't personally care if people tell me I'm not attracted to black women, I'm not attracted to Spanish women, whatever it is. Do your thing. You know what I mean? That's the reason why you're allowed to be you and I'm allowed to be me. A question that I would ask you then is what is your dating life?
I don't have a dating life.
So you don't date.
No.
So you have a perspective about who you want to marry. Do you intend to get married?
I do. I do intend to get married and have kids.
So where are you at on that?
I'm trying to get prepared for that mentally.
What does that mean? You're 26 years old.
I like my life. I like being single. I like being a guy. I like what I like. I like reading books. I like doing my show. I'm a pretty antisocial person. And it's a big adjustment for a man to go from having a life where you can do whatever you want, go wherever you want, unaccountable, everything like that, to then you have to be roommates with women and children. It's a totally different lifestyle. And for someone like myself, I'm a pretty eccentric and, kind of out there person. I don't have a regular sleep schedule. I'm awake all night. I'm asleep all day. And my sleep schedule's moving around all the time. I like to go out on drives all the time. The idea of my wife sending me out the door, okay, be home by 10, call me and tell me where you're going. Or, I go on a trip. I got to get the car seats and buy all the plane tickets and stuff like that. It's kind of cramping my style. So I'm trying to get over that, I guess. But that's maturing.
Yeah, I think you should probably mature on that point. I mean, what?
Yeah, I know. You don't got to tell me. I know.
I want to go for drives. That would be something. I mean, if you are, do you attend the mass?
I do.
Do you go every Sunday?
I do, yeah.
Okay, so you're like a committed Catholic. Then obviously, the perspectives on family. I mean, I personally, and this would be me lecturing, but I just feel like you really have no idea who you are until you start a family. And whether that means just marriage, some people who are struggling to have children, okay, fine. But there's such a growth that happens because of that I think it informs your beliefs in so many ways. And I think that was a huge turning point for me. I wonder if I had been pressed with everything that happened last year, if I didn't have the unshaken faith and my family, what would I have done? And sometimes when I see the things that you say, I do think, okay, he doesn't take into account family. It's just Nick. Nick is in his own world, which can be, I think, a quite selfish perspective, which is fine. That's what you're saying. You like being selfish is another way to say what you just said. I like being selfish and I don't want to give of myself to somebody else. But
I also think there's something selfless involved, which is to say, I could go and start a family and drag them into a world of mine, which is pretty chaotic. I mean, is this really the kind of a lifestyle? if I'm banned on everything and I can't make a living, I'm banned from banking, I'm banned from credit card processing, I'm getting doxxed, people are showing up to my house trying to kill me, things like that. And what's more, I mean, let's also get, I also don't appreciate the lecture. You don't know me, so I know you're married. I know you're older than me, but you don't know me. You don't know my life. You don't know my situation. I don't think you're in a position to give me advice, especially as a woman, honestly. I don't think women, this is something in the right wing. We say we're anti-feminist, and then women go around telling men what to do who are not their husbands. And, I don't really buy into that ideologically, but that's besides the point. My life has been tumultuous from the very beginning. From the time I turned 18, people were coming for my neck and trying to get me, and I was kicked out of college. And then, once you're branded as an anti-Semite, before it became cool or popular, can't get a job, can't make a living, get banned from PayPal, all this kind of stuff. That's a very difficult environment to try to have a dating life. What do? I go out on Tinder, I go to a bar, and I say, hey, I'm a neo-Nazi Nick Fuentes that the ADL is writing articles about every day. I'm going to start a dating profile on Tinder. People are going to screenshot that, mess with me in all kinds of ways. It's a very difficult predicament, actually, for me, because I took on basically a huge sacrifice at the beginning. And I don't know that you really appreciate that enough. I think that you're somebody who, you had a career in politics for as long as I was fighting a battle. You were at Daily Wire with a contract. You're at Turning Point. You're making good money. You're doing book deals. You're part of this thing that I'm criticizing and paying a very heavy price for at a time when no one's saying those things, when it's very unpopular. And it's not to say that I'm a victim, because I did it willingly and I love it and I would do it again. But it is to say that, you and I have lived very different lives. And, it's easy, I think, for you to say you had your husband, have your kids, you got your ducks in a row, made quite a bit of money. Then you discovered the truth, and then you went out on a limb. And it's not to say you didn't make sacrifices and it wasn't a risk, and it paid off. You're doing great now, and I congratulate you. But with me, there was no calculation. I mean, I almost want to say I was 17. What's your excuse? I was 17, and I woke up, and I went balls to the wall, bucket of ice cold water, as you say. I made a lot of enemies, and maybe that wasn't wise. But I told the truth, and I took on extremely heavy cost for my personal life. It basically has made it so that I can't have a personal life. I don't even have many friends. Forget about, dating women. I can't even really have a lot of male friends because there's such an incentive to betray me, to turn your back on me, because there are people that are being paid to attack me all the time on Twitter or for information about me, things like that. So, it's something like everything else that I'm figuring out one step at a time, just like my show. And, when I get banned from something, whether or not I'll be able to have a family and kids and what that'll look like. But I mean, it's a little more complicated, I think, than maybe you understand.
I feel like you just got super triggered by me just saying something so casual. What was that about?
See, I don't appreciate
you're a woman.
that.
You're like, you're a woman. I mean, I was just having a conversation with you, just being like, hey, like you, there's a lot of growth that comes from when you start a family. Like it's a pretty cool thing to do. And I feel like you got pretty triggered there and got like a little upset. I don't know what I did there.
I don't like that you say triggered.
Well, you were a little bit triggered.
I'm being candid. I'm being candid with you. And,
but saying, a woman does shit, it's like, okay.
You're talking about my personal life. You're talking about my personal life.
Yeah, we're having a conversation. I talk to tons of people about their personal lives. Like, why do you feel like that wasn't a line of attack, Nick?
I know it wasn't a line of attack.
So why you kind of responded like you were just attacked?
Because you're giving me this lecture, giving me this advice about things and telling me, you don't know who you are and all this kind of stuff.
I said that when people start families, it does commute your perspectives a lot. And sometimes when I see these clips of you floating around or certain things that you do or say,
you said I'm selfish.
It does. Yeah, but you admitted you were selfish.
And I just don't really
You said
appreciate
I don't want to. What are you talking about? You just said that the reason that you didn't want to have a family, when I asked the question or didn't start a family, you said was because I like to drive alone in my car. I don't really want to have to come home and have to deal with roommates, as you referred to, children and a wife. You want to stay selfish. You want to, you want to be in your own world. That's a fair assessment. I
said that in terms of my development, I'm trying to get over some of those aspects.
That is selfish, right? I mean, is that fair assessment?
I think that's judgmental. I think that's a judgmental
selfish.
Way to look
You
at
want to spend time with yourself. You don't want to invite people into your space. I think I used that word exactly as it should be used.
Well, and I'm explaining why there's there's multiple aspects to it too. It's not just as
That's
simple as
fine,
that.
but acting like I tried to offend you when I just
I'm not
gave
saying
you
you
a
tried
word
to
to use. I definitely
Look.
did not try to offend you when I was asking you about family. You ask people about themselves.
Okay.
That's for the same reason that I asked you about what you were up to in high school and what your priorities were, what you were doing in college. It's because it's a natural point. You're 26 years old. People are going to ask you, okay, you have all these perspectives. You're saying people a very natural transition. You're talking about the fact that you don't believe people should interracially marry, correct?
Yeah.
I think it's pretty fair to then move on to the discussion and ask you about marriage. There wasn't some like trap there.
Yeah, no, and I don't think that's my issue with it. But I don't think I got triggered. I think I gave you a real response. So
You were like, listen, woman, don't ask me what I'm doing.
I didn't say listen. Look, I happen to believe that I don't like women telling me what to do in general.
I didn't tell you what to do. I said that when you get married, you said you wanted to get married.
You said you're giving me a lecture. You said
Yeah,
you
I
go
said,
to
well, this may
church
sound
and-
like a lecture
Okay.
because I'm sounding like an old timer here, but I didn't tell you what to do. Like
Okay.
if you're giving a lecture on any topic, hey, this is what's great about marriage. I didn't say, Nick, you need to get married right
I
now.
just feel like it's pointed. I feel like a lot of these questions are pointed, but maybe that's just me and I'm imagining it.
Genuinely, you're imagining it.
Yeah,
I don't think
okay.
anybody watching that is going to be like, that was a setup after he talked about interracial marriage for her to ask him his perspectives on his own life and
Yeah.
what if he's dating people. To be honest, if you want me to psychoanalyze that, I feel
Well, I don't, but
okay.
feel free.
Yeah, I feel free. Thanks. I feel like I do think you got a little bit triggered there. And I think that towards the end of that triggering, you kind of got to the main gist that because of your life, it's difficult for you to actually establish real world connections with people because there is the Nick Fuentes caricature. And there's probably a little bit of pressure for you to maintain the Nick Fuentes caricature. I don't know that you feel that you can have, go out in the real world and have friends and go out in the real world. And like you just said, I can't really get on Tinder and be like, I'm Nick Fuentes, have somebody screenshot it. And then it becomes a thing and people are making fun of you. Like, I think that's a real understandable answer, but I don't think you had to knife me to get to it.
I didn't knife you. Well, what did I knife you?
You were just like, we'll have to play it back. What did he say? Like, he was like, whoa, I don't appreciate a woman telling me. Just like, dude, chill. It's it's a freaking conversation. Relax. Like, it was not like demanding you go get married tomorrow. I'm just saying, I think if you get married, a lot of your perspectives are going to be a little bit different, especially having a kid.
I'm sure that's true.
A kid just completely changes the game again. It's like
I'm
a
sure
whole
that's true.
nother level. And, family's good.
I don't think I got triggered, but
a little bit.
maybe.
Okay, so any questions that you want to ask me since you talk so much trash and you're finally face to face with Candace?
Honestly,
I'm an open book, so you can ask me anything.
It is really cool meeting you because I've seen you around forever and I am a fan, believe it or not.
Is that you being a fan, these clips? Is that you being a fan?
I am, but look, I have a lot of strong feelings. I'm very opinionated, but I think I give you your due as well. And if you watch all the clips, I do say a lot of nice things about you. So, no, but I really am. I think that you're tough. I think that you're real. I think that you're a little coy. You could be a little coy and you could be a little passive aggressive, but I kind of like that. I kind of like this when you were debating that Rabbi Barclay, you kind of had this energy like, I'm going to talk to your manager. You kind of had this like,
I can be a Karen sometimes.
You kind of had this like, excuse me, I think I said the dressing on the side kind of like energy. So.
Fair.
So I live for that. That's why I'm a Standis.
That was the show that apparently you talked about me where I think people started thinking that there was some coordination happening. And the clip was very funny, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah. So, look, I'm a little bit of a mixed bag. I hope you don't think I'm just heaping trash upon you. Heaping dumpsters on you.
If you were, you're allowed to. It's a free country. I think people should stop being so fearful to have a disagreement. Like I said, I'm not afraid to sit down with somebody who says I'm a racist or I'm an anti-Semite or I'm this and that I truly do believe that the best idea wins. So I think people are going to listen to this and you're going to say, this is why I don't think people should interracially marry. And some people are going to agree with that and they have a right to marry who they want to. And I'm going to say I'm having the opposite experience and let people make up their minds. You're not pushing for legislation. You'd be an enemy of me if you were pushing for, miscegenation laws to be put back into place. But I don't really understand why they've kind of turned you into Lord Voldemort.
Yeah, I know. What do you think? Let me ask you a selfish question. What do you think about me? Meeting me, what's your impression? Do you think I'm an evil person or?
I don't think you're evil. I think you're asking me. So,
I am asking.
okay.
That's all fair game.
If I was to just kind of analyze my own correspondence with you, I think that when you sense that somebody is potentially going to hurt you because you got so burned when you were 18 years old, you go on the attack. And unnecessarily. I just think that is kind of your default position where it's like, well, I just got to say F you to this person and whatever. And that's why I go back to, if you wanted to come on the show, you could have just asked. Like, I don't respond to empty Groyper accounts. We had established communication over something legal. You should have been like, hey, Candace, I've been watching your stuff. Like, it'd be cool if we could do a collab. And I would have been like, yeah, definitely. Let's do it. Or I would have said, oh, not right now. I need to wait until, but hit me back up or whatever. I think because you got kind of pigeonholed, which is necessarily happened because you got banned everywhere. Like, obviously, you're just going to be like in the pocket of Cozy TV, and getting that feedback from other Groypers. I don't know how Cozy TV works. That sometimes you can internet a little too hard, and everybody's guilty of that. Like, you can be so entrenched in the comments that you kind of think that this is the perspective and this is why somebody's doing it. And I think that you assign evil sometimes where there really is just disagreement, and that you also feel like the world owes you something for being canceled first. I didn't do it to you. I had no idea it was done to you. While I was at the Daily Wire, I had no idea it was done to you. Truly, and I'm saying this, it was that conversation you had with Jeremy Boring that made me aware of your story, and I thought it was crappy. So I was being sincere when I said to Aiden Ross that he needs to decide what he wants to do now, because people didn't know. No one was trying to, like, they're just like, I don't know who Nick Fuentes is. Everybody says he's a white supremacist. Like, I'm not going to just suddenly pick up the phone and try to learn everything about this guy. It doesn't matter to me. It doesn't impact my life. And I don't think the world owes you anything. It happened to you for a reason, and just you got to just try to make the best of it, you know?
Yeah. No, and I agree. And I think that's a fair criticism in the sense that, at that time, a year ago, when you said, you weren't going to have me on for this or that reason, I'm being honest with you, I didn't believe you. And I'm, not to relitigate the whole thing, but that's why it made me so mad. I felt like you weren't being forthcoming. I felt like you were avoiding me and making excuses. And you're right. In my whole career, I've been doing this 8.5 years now or something like that. That has been the repeated default, is just getting stabbed in the back, getting thrown under the bus, people sneak dissing me, doing the bare minimum. Like Dave Smith, he did a show with me and then wouldn't call me Hitler. And then he's like, this guy, he felt like I owed him something. All I did was disagree with him. And he said, but I stuck up for this kid. It's like, well, you did a show with me and you didn't call me Hitler. I feel like you are entitled to honest and dignified treatment. So that's sort of where I'm coming from. But, as two people from different worlds, and our worlds are colliding, you from Daily Wire, me from the underground, from Cozy, we do have, I think, these misunderstandings and miscommunications. And it's good that, we could sit down and speak honestly about it and, be able to level with each other.
Yeah, I think, and just in closing here, I want to challenge people that if you think somebody is the most evil person in the world, man, just have the conversation. Like, it's pretty simple to sit down and have a conversation, and not to allow ourselves to think that people are irredeemable when you don't even know their backstories. So lesson learned. I got to stop here because baby is hungry. So
well,
stop there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, all right. Where is he? Bring him.